Hello, Who viewers. Welcome back to Who's Views. And I'm laughing because I'm laughing at Brendan there. Already go for, look, we can all do look. Yes, because welcome, everybody, one and all, to this Who's Views special. We are looking at 60 years of the #1 baddie in the universe. Yes, step aside, Darth Vader. Star Wars fans, step aside, because the Daleks were there. I mean, can you imagine if the Daleks met Vader? It would just be a quick zoosh, wouldn't it? And off he would go there. So as you can see, I'm joined by Paul, I'm joined by Alex, I'm joined by Time Modeler Brendan, and I'm joined by Third Doctor Ian. Nice to see you all. Yes. Isn't it? It's amazing, actually, guys. You know, when we're compiling the show and put this together to celebrate 60 years of the original nasty, if you like, it was amazing that from our point of view, well, from at least three of us on this, it's amazing that the Daleks actually are part of our psyche, if you like, our fandom, because I only ever saw the Daleks on television twice because I grew up with Tom, really. And so we got Genesis and we got Destiny. But I suddenly realized that all through the 70s, right up until their reappearance with Resurrection in 84, they were there. It was though they were around all the time. Isn't that amazing?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's credit to the design, though. They stay in here. People see them and they never forget them. It's the perfect design.
Well, you have to remember the Peter Cushing movies were on constantly, weren't they?
Oh, yes, and they are just as important to the Dalek legacy, aren't they? Really, to what we're talking about here. But yeah, I think there is something. You're absolutely right with that design. I mean, it showed the importance and the success of the Daleks in 1960s Doctor Who, didn't it? Really, I mean, they had cemented themselves as part of culture, the Daleks. So here we were, you know, and for myself, first seeing them in Genesis, the Daleks, at a time when I can remember it, and then having to wait a few years until they come along in Destiny. I just think that's magical, and it shows the impact of this creature, this wonderful, wonderful. So what we're going to be doing, Who Views, on this one is we're going to be celebrating the Daleks. Yes, we're going to be talking about our favourite memories through Doctor Who, our favourite episode. And yes, hopefully we'll also talk about some of this, if we get time, some of the merchandise that's come up over the years. So yeah, I mean, we'll start with you, Ian. What's your memory of Doctor Who and the Daleks?
My earliest memory of Doctor Who actually involves the Daleks. It was the very final episode of Frontier in Space, and it was the Master on the cliff top saying he'd brought some friends with him, or some friends of the Doctor's with him, and then these Daleks. Now, in my head, that's exactly it. Now, in my head, I remember a massive line of Daleks.
Yeah.
In reality, obviously, there was just two filmed a couple of times, angles. But in my head, I remember seeing this huge line of Daleks, of course, which never was. But I can only remember that scene from Planet of the Daleks. I cannot remember anything before it, anything else from that episode. But I remember everything from Planet of the Daleks episode 1 onwards.
Well, it's a great entrance for the Daleks, though, isn't it? It's one of the only times where they've appeared right at the end of another story entirely with a complete surprise.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
And even though it's only 3 or 2 or 4 when it's kind of shot differently, it's a great image. And having the Master with the Daleks is superb, isn't it?
We see, my first memory was Day of the Daleks, and it was only a black and white portable while we were on holiday in Torquay in a caravan. So it was tiny. And I think even then, I think it was a repeat. But what I remember is, you know, when they're on the field and there's all of, 3 of them, but they had the Ogrons as well. So, you know, as a kid, again, a bit like you were saying, Ian, I saw more than 3. As a kid, I thought, because I mean, it filled the blooming screen. So the whole point was you assumed there were loads attacking you. Yes. You see, my first 2 memories are the field when they're attacking the house. And of course, that tunnel when they landed in the tunnel, because you need an enclosed space sometimes with a Dalek. You need a corridor or a dark.
Hello. It's not that sort of show, please.
And I just remember seeing, you know, John Pertwee being very statuesque, and as soon as he sees a Dalek appear, and the way he runs and everything, and I just remember that time tunnel effect and the field. So to me, a bit like Ian, I'm trumping him slightly because we agree on most of our memories on the Daleks, but I'm just a tiny bit earlier. but it's the numbers thing. It didn't affect you as a kid.
No,
It's
it
like television.
didn't. Sorry, Alex.
The thrill of seeing the Daleks. You see a couple, there's more. So
yeah, it's amazing that you say that, Alex, because in your head you know that, don't you? You might see a couple on the screen, but you just know that there's millions of them in your head as a kid. Alex, you are of course a huge Dalek fan. Huge
as much
Dalek
as the show
fan.
itself, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they could do a Dalek serial, couldn't they? Which we wouldn't want to do today because it would probably be woke as hell, and it'd be sort of like, they wouldn't be as nasty as we all know them to be. But if they did, you would be there on that series, wouldn't you? You'd be loving that series. What was it about the Daleks that captured your imagination as a kid to make you the huge Dalek fan that you are today?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer that. When I was writing the introduction to my recent Evolution of the Toy Dalek book, I was trying to think back to that moment.
There's a plug there, everyone. I love it.
That is part of the introduction. It's like, okay, I don't necessarily have a specific first memory of Doctor Who. It's like it's always been there. I can pinpoint the first vivid, clear memory of watching a full story, which was Mordred Undead, but I have flashes before that. My first clear Dalek memory was the Five Doctors, but I already knew of them. But how? So I concluded that I must have seen one of the repeats earlier on in the early 80s, because they re-showed, I think, both Destiny and Genesis.
Yeah.
So I think I must have seen one of those repeats to have already known about the Daleks when the Five Doctors came on. And then, of course, a year later when Resurrection appeared, that just cemented my obsession both with the series and with the Daleks.
That's interesting, that is, isn't it? Because again, it shows that how the Daleks had sort of cemented themselves into the psyche of not just Doctor Who fans, but of course in this country they are huge. They were appearing on all sorts of other shows when you were a kid as well, Alex. They were appearing on the Generation Game. They were appearing on Tomorrow's World or whatever. All these little things. Breakfast Time.
You could not beat the thrill of an unexpected Dalek. Even in kids' books, I remember having a little comic book by Willie Rushton, and it was part of the Magic Cottage series. And in one of the lovely illustrations, the kid's in his bedroom, and in the background there's a toy Dalek sitting on a shelf. And I just used to love stuff like that. And even when you'd go excited, when I was little, I loved robots and stuff. So I'd always go to the library and rent out books on robots, and there'd often be a photo of a Dalek or something, and it was just such a thrill to see them off screen, out of context. I think I started drawing them around a similar sort of time. I don't know what it is about them. The shape, it's not the fact that they're evil. That was always sort of secondary. I think it's the design, the fact that they are this strange, mechanical looking thing. It's just such a brilliant bit of design.
And it was totally different, wasn't it, everybody? I mean, for the kids, we've said this while we've been celebrating the show's 60th anniversary through our November shows, all available now, by the way, on the Diamond Dazzlers playlist here on Who's Views. Please like and subscribe. But we have said that to be a kid back in 1963 and to suddenly have this television show come onto television, it must have blown them away, especially when they got to see these really weird tanks. Which spoke in a very grating and menacing manner. It's no wonder that the kids were running around the playgrounds, was it? Each Monday for months and months, if not years, playing Dalek.
And that sink plunger in those days was, I mean, when you saw the Daleks the other day and when you see the repeats on your DVDs, and it was like a feeler, wasn't it? It was a much longer. Remember, if you see how they attack Barbara and that they're feeling around when they arrive, they're very long and protruded. Then
you rarely see their long protrusions these days.
Yeah, well, no, and this is
that's work for you.
Yeah, Ian's about to show you his long protrusion there. Look at that.
It's about extends to about 8-9 feet.
Wow!
How talk you are.
Yeah. It's probably problematic these days, though, isn't it? Really,
it's very problematic. Yeah.
I think the thing to remember is that no one had ever seen anything like the Daleks before on TV. When you look at science fiction in the 50s, you've got amazing films like The Day the Earth Stood Still, but the robot Gort is just a man in a man-shaped suit. Yeah. I think the best example of or you've got Robbie the Robot, which is kind of fun and cute. I think the best example of any sort of alien was probably the original War of the Worlds things that flew around.
True.
They were terrifying.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
until the Daleks trundled onto our screens, you know, you hadn't seen a robotic design like that really meant serious business. It was a game changer.
It is a game changer, and this is a good time actually just to say, to remember the genius that was Terry Nation, and of course the designer Ray Kuzik. And we all know the story about how they worked together from the story. We know how Nation wanted something that was not a man in a suit, didn't we, Alex? You know, and how Kuzik battled with the various designs and eventually came up with the Dalek. It's interesting on these blueprints as well, Brendan, that it does actually mention a magnet. I can't zoom in on that, but it does say it has in the sucker. It has to have a huge magnet, industrial strength magnet, so that it can move some of the stuff. And you know, we saw that in the episode itself. I wonder if they continue to do that as the years went by, to have one of them with that big magnet in there. Hello to everybody that's watching with us this evening. Nice to see you all. We've got a lot of the usual crew in here as well. So lovely, lovely, lovely. Jack is saying here, the Daleks are often mocked for being silly, but for those of us with imaginations, they're still terrifying. And you know what? They still should be. Nobody should be going and making any sort of comic reference out of the Daleks, you know, because they should be feared, shouldn't they, guys?
Oh, definitely. I know Terry Nation was very protective of that, wasn't he? Which is very wise, because you don't want to make a fool of your main protagonist. The enemy is very important. And the Dalek, I think it's a line from Master Plan, you know, one Dalek is capable of exterminating all. That's a brilliant line that sums up the Dalek's power, don't you think?
Oh, totally.
And it's the fact that they are very, I mean, you've got Cybermen and everything, but what you come down to with the Daleks is they seem so uncompromising and relentless. And yeah, you go back to their origins and where Terry Nation got his idea from. The one words, not a sentence you will be deleted or anything, it's exterminate. It's very simple, it's very strong, it's very uncompromising. You don't tend to see Daleks negotiating, except maybe Death to the Daleks and stuff like that. You don't really see Daleks saying, no, this is our way, or that's it.
But in that story you mentioned there's a reason for it, isn't it? Because they're weakened.
Yeah,
you know, because the old gun isn't working at that particular point. As soon as they get the bullet version of the they're back to the nasty cells, aren't they?
Spoilers coming up. Don't trust them an inch.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Jack's wanting to know. He's got a question for us all. So answers on a postcard too. Who's been inside the Dalek?
I have. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. All right, where was that? Paul, you said
the Blackpool exhibition photograph of me doing Davros. I was inside the Dalek at Blackpool in 1985, and I've got a photograph you have from a long time ago I gave you for Blackpool, and that was my experience with that. It was great fun, very claustrophobic, great fun.
Yeah. Brendan, where did you get inside the Dalek? This is sounding a bit
Yes, it's the mutant one. So I was in Scarborough as a kid. I've just been going through our old slides, and there's a very unfortunately blurred shot, and it was an enormous Dalek, like a big black one. And there was a little chair inside, and you put your 10p in, and you whirled around, and that was my version of being inside a Dalek.
Best Ian, spent, I bet, as well.
Yeah, I suppose, Ian, you've climbed inside that one behind you a lot, haven't you, and drove it around?
You can get inside that, although you are hunched over because the neck upwards is or the head is sealed off. But same type of thing as Brendan, but it was a red one at Butlins in Filey in 1974, where we were during episode 6 of Planet of the Spiders, which I missed and never forgave my family for.
Quite right too.
Yeah.
Absolutely quite right. Oh, why would you?
My friend's got a Dalek full size one of these Imperial ones in his house, and I've been inside one of them as well, and it's very creaky. When you move the limbs, the plunger and the gun, it creaks all the time. It's really creaky. It needs to be oiled, I think.
I was able to get inside one at a convention and move it around, and by God, it was hard work. So that's never going to happen again, because it was far too much like hard work for my life. It was actually really difficult to steer, and this was when the show was off the air. So it brought home to me how good all the guys that were in those things were at navigating. You know, because if they were that heavy, goodness me, and they're on a set, they've got to go to their marks. They've got to do all the little. Oh no, please! That was brilliant.
When you look at the people like John Scott Martin or Cy Town or people like that, they weren't big guys, so you know there's not a lot to them. So if they're heavy and they're very slight guys, it must have been quite quite an effort. But when you mention that word, exterminate, in 1963, that was quite a brave thing as well, because you're 18 years away from when they exposed all the concentration camps in Germany, and you're using that word exterminate. I mean, that's
very bold in hindsight, isn't it?
Oh yeah, very ballsy, yeah. To actually write it and then produce it with that word.
Yeah, it created nightmares. That's where RTD did a masterstroke. And was it 2010 when he had the flying Daleks at Nuremberg and they were saying exterminate in German? Whoa, that was...
exterminierung.
Yeah, but you're right, Ian. I mean, going back to 1963, there would have been an entire generation there, or well, actually a couple of generations that lived through the Second World War. So this, I mean, I use the word tank deliberately because there were a lot of people that would have recognized the Dalek as a tank because of the way it moved, the way it looked. Plus, it's for them scary, familiar chance. Yeah. I mean, that must have taken them right back. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it was very brave of them, but I think there was also that element that made them successful in that British sense, you know, because you know we were very tongue in cheek, not so much these days, but we were back then. And this would have been the adults going, ooh, and then that passing down to the kids. And that's, I think, what's cemented the Doctor Who success of being a family drama. The parents were okay with these things. And we all know the story. These things were massive. They helped Doctor Who to just fly, didn't it? Absolutely fly. You know, but yeah, I think the imagery there, I think what you guys are saying there is absolutely spot on. I think that the adults would have helped as well as the kids there.
I mean, as a kid, you always thought that the grilled bit here was where you thought there was something behind, because we all knew there was.
Yes.
Like you were saying, Alex, there were the robots that everyone talked about, but we knew as kids, we knew they were different because we knew there was something in there. So that grilled bit always intrigued me. That's the tank bit to me. I know we're thinking of the whole thing, but that tank bit there, knowing there's something inside that. And of course, we try and humanize it because we've got the eye stalks that actually in the 60s and that they moved them an awful lot more, didn't they? They give them an awful lot of personality. The eye stalks are moving amazingly, but it was this bit, seeing that go past really got me because I was always intrigued what was inside. And as if you're going to go back to 63, you're going to have to talk about, of course, when and we saw it the other day in the Daleks in colour, when they look inside and of course send the ladies away and actually get
quite right too
get the mutant out, and of course that's the beginning of it all, isn't it? To know, because all they had to do was show a claw, didn't it? That's all they had to do.
But that was the beauty of it, because that cemented, didn't it, guys? That cemented the fact these weren't robots.
Absolutely.
You know, there was something in it. Alex, do you remember? I mean, being the big Dalek fan you have, am I right in saying one of your favourite moments was the reveal of the Dalek, what was inside the casing?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe it was some kind of warped childhood obsession with what was inside things, but
Hurrah!
I think, you know, it's that scene in The Five Doctors where you get that first proper clear glimpse of a Kaled mutant writhing around, and they did it so brilliantly. And it's never looked better in anything they've done since. That is one of those moments in Who that's never been bettered. But it was the first time you got to see properly what was inside these things in a brilliant scene.
And it had little claws on it as well, didn't it? It was like you know. I remember at the time. I mean, that was the first time, obviously, in The Five Doctors, 1983, that we saw what was inside. And I remember one very cruel journalist in one of the papers saying, and for the first time in 20 years, we get to see what was in a Dalek. Was it worth the wait? Cruel, but it was so good. They repeated it, didn't they? In 1984, in Resurrection of the Dalek, we started seeing blobby things all over the place. I mean, look at this. But I mean, were any of you guys unimpressed?
No, that was amazing.
No, it's great. I wish they were more animated in Resurrection, like they were in Five Doctors, but they still look great.
The problem with Resurrection is that you show that shot there, and the actual Dalek mutant seems to be quite large. Yeah. And yet, when you see it attacking the soldier later, it's like the size of a pancake. You know, it's not.
Well, they're probably different sizes.
Yeah.
Yeah, different sized mutants, or maybe they're in their blobbiness. They can actually just form parts of it. Because I was actually watching. I was telling Alex, I've watched Resurrection for this show. I've watched Destiny, and I watched Planet, just to get me in a Dalek mood this week. And they're just all brilliant when you go back and revisit them, aren't they?
Yeah.
But the Resurrection, especially Resurrection, I remember it brings back those elements from 1984, where I'm watching these 2 episodes, as we all know at the time, thrilled because this is the first time the Daleks had been on in the 80s. And it just brought, every time I watch it, I get all that feeling coming back, going, oh my God, and nicely using the continuity set down by Genesis and Destiny, nicely carrying it forward, not having to meddle with it in any way. You all know who I'm talking about, and you just get on with it and it moves it forward. Thank you for everybody that's watching us this evening. It's nice to see you. Pete's saying here, the Daleks reminded me of taxis. The Daleks light on the heads in the 1970s, yes, but you wouldn't want to slow one down and ask it for a ride, would you? Darren App Ken. Hello, Darren. It's the idea of the Daleks that keeps them forever in our imaginations. They represent the worst and darkest aspects of ourselves. That's absolutely, you can't argue with that. That's fantastic. And Sudeko24 is saying that gruesome image would be too much for the ladies to worry their pretty little heads over. Well, it was gentlemen being gentlemen back then, wasn't it? Quite rightly. No, you look over there. This is a bit too squidgy for you. Quite right too, I say. And we've got Sadeko again saying, when I got the 5 Doctors, Alex, on video and watched with friends, that exposed wriggling Dalek creature was the bit they most rewound. Well, I hope they're all locked up, quite frankly. Yeah, so yeah, I mean,
it was done very well. They did. And the way it gradually slowed down and obviously died, it was really good.
And all that guns that was coming off it as well, because the 5 Doctors, of course, did get it was that and the Cybermen blood or oil, wasn't it? They were the 2 bits that the critic mainly didn't really want to look at, didn't they? Problem being is saying here, it's a dehydrated mutant. I'm sure most of us have been like that on a Sunday morning ourselves. Poor thing. We've got here, what we got here? Whoa, I've lost that. There was something else that was coming on there, but I've lost it. But never mind. Keep the comments coming. Thank you very much. Anyway, so, what other memories do we have from back in the day of all this, of the Daleks and how they've cemented ourselves and got through 60 years?
You were talking about the mutants. When the mutants turn up, when you see the creature, that's always been a great moment for fans. One that sticks in my mind particularly, though, is the last time they appeared in Classic. Was the bit still gets me every time when McCoy looks into the Dalek and the claw comes up and grabs him by the throat. That gets me every time, and I've seen it loads of times.
They've mutated again, he says, doesn't they? Which
and then they grab him.
It brings a whole new element in for us there, doesn't it?
And what's fascinating is you never get a clear view of it, so you're just left to imagine what the rest of the thing must have looked like.
Yes, a great moment. Yeah.
So it takes us right back. The green blobby things are in those ones over there, but you've suddenly got this purple clawy thing over here. And then the new series adds to that a couple of decades later, doesn't it? I mean, the success of the
Daleks it as well, didn't they? They, as they looked into it after the claw and they hit it down with the baseball bat, they then looked in. And I think you got the camera angle from out of inside the Dalek, didn't you? Looking up at them. And they were describing it, saying that it had mechanical bits grafted onto it as well. So that obviously, and it just added to that. You're thinking of what it looks like. Your imagination's doing the work, which is the best way to do it.
Which is how it should be. That's how you write properly, isn't it? You let the viewer take over. You suggest something, and you let the viewer. And that was always the beauty of the Daleks. And it's no surprise that they've lasted 60 years. And it was no surprise at all, was it, to anybody really? It must have been a thrill that they were chosen to bring in a new Doctor. I mean that's common sense at the end of the day, isn't it? Use your best villain to bring in this new fella. I mean, how brilliant is that?
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously they had to play a clever game because regeneration then was obviously seen as unique, risky, and so you needed something that was very recognizable. And after the Doctor, if you're going to change the Doctor, the only other thing totally recognizable, I suppose, the TARDIS is the Daleks. And so the Daleks give almost helped transition Troughton as well, because the whole point was he's got enemy number one, but it's clearly a Doctor Who program for those of the not-wees who weren't used to regeneration. So you had...
Well, nobody was back then, because it was the the first time it was done.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't say transition, Brendan. That's problematic.
I know. I've triggered.
That story was on now. That was on now, because I was born between episode 1 and episode 2, and that was beginning in November. So 6 episodes, it would have been on now.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. The Daleks' obsession with racial purity is their Achilles heel. Basically, the trick about knowing what a Dalek is, a Dalek hates anything that isn't a Dalek. And even then, if it's another Dalek, it's on dodgy ground. That's the trick of a Dalek, isn't it, really? And it's all about that trigger happy. Well, I'm going to get you.
But I remember in Planet of the Daleks being quite impressed and scared by the fact that, when the Dalek Supreme came and they said, basically, you've run a shoddy operation here, and you've failed, and we're going to exterminate you. And it's like the classic, isn't it? If you don't do a good job, we won't sack you. We'll kill you. That's it.
It was like The Apprentice with Alan Sugar, but it was a Dalek instead, wasn't it?
You're
fired.
Listen, I've told you a lot on the panel before. Will you stop giving them ideas for spin-off shows? We've got to trademark things before you do that. I mean, Brendan, it's interesting that you mention the Dalek Supreme there, because my first Dalek venture that I really, really remember was Genesis, and that's why it's so special to me. And then, of course, I had to wait for Destiny. That's what I was saying at the top of the show. I went for years with only 2 Dalek shows, really, and I got all my knowledge from the Target books. So I didn't understand this. So to find out there was a hierarchy from Doctor Who Weekly or the Target books was insane. And to find out that this fellow was around was mind-boggling. I mean, look at him. He's fantastic, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, he's like a dodgy Ofsted inspector who arrives suddenly to scare you all to death, checking all your work. I mean, and the way he parades, he lands and he's paraded through, and there's a little patrol, and then he comes and, as you know, when you get a new boss or something, he kicks an awful lot of furniture around and kicks off. And of course, Daleks are funny. They all want to be pure and everything, and yet they all like to bling up if they're slightly superior. And they do have a sense of humour. They do, and they do have a sense of humour. We mentioned Death of the Daleks. I mean, they're so strict, but of course, while they were planning to get their little machine guns in the spaceship, they were practising on a police box, and so they have a sense of humour, don't they?
I love the fact that somewhere a Dalek's going out of his way to build that little model TARDIS target practice.
I love that, actually. I love that. I thought it was quite sweet, that little thing. But I mean, the first time I think I saw Planet of Spiders in full was the repeat that would have been the 90s, wouldn't it?
93.
Yeah,
93.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, it's all a blur. Yeah, the anniversary. And I had to sit down and watch this properly every time they showed it, because I just wanted to get to that bit where I saw this great big thing coming in. And he's like royalty. And even the music's a bit like, look at me. And I just thought, oh, yeah, I've got to have one of them. Absolutely superb. And why don't they keep doing that? Okay, we've had various things now, but oh, my goodness. A newly regenerated Doctor faces his most implacable foe, a baptism of fire for Doctor number 2, and a safe bet as well. That Dalek Supreme, says Today 24, executing its subordinate is still disturbing to watch. Now, well, that's what I mean about it. He doesn't care, does he? Bang, there he is there.
Kid, I was intrigued by the fact that his eye stalk was like my little torch. There's
the reason for that, though. Richard is saying to us, nice to see you, Richard. As a child, I wanted to watch The Evil of the Daleks because it was hinted at in a Target novelization. And some of them, actually, what's in my imagination, because it's so long ago for some of the Target
books.
It's
in Day of the Daleks, isn't it? Because there was a reference in the strips Day of the Daleks about the Civil War, and I think it's in the book, but it wasn't in the TV version, if my memory serves.
In some of the Target books, there's hints to previous adventures or things. I mean, Terence was good at that sort of stuff as well, because he knew the show backwards. Let's face it, Terence was watching every week, even when he wasn't on it, wasn't he? He was absolutely there. But I'm sure. What's this from Richard? JT is right. Well, yeah. They're already making Davros dances for the spring schedule. Well, from what we're hearing, that could be in the Christmas one. Let's have a look here. I don't know what that means. Problem being, Oh, he's so
Oh,
naughty,
calm
that
down.
one, isn't he? Yeah.
Well,
I was going to say one thing about Planet of the Daleks. I absolutely love. One of my memories was the well, Doctor Who does this all the time. But most Dalek stories have something of the Daleks, and there's always a cliffhanger when the Daleks turn up, even though you know they're coming. And that was part of the fun of the fact that
Let your audience wait.
Yeah, you wait, and here they come. Yes. But my favorite bit was from Planet of the Daleks. One of my favorite bits is the invisible Dalek moment. That is superb.
Yeah.
How to make the Daleks more scary? My God, they're invisible as well. And there's a invisible tank. How scary is that?
Well, here's another offshoot show for you, JT. We've done Apprentice. What about this? Is interior design, isn't it? Because he had to spray him, didn't he? You had to get, get all your spray paints out and kind of spray Dalek, and then you spot where they are. So, interior design challenge or something. But
changing the Daleks is called, I think. That's
the invisible Dalek. That was the thing. We've been mentioning imagination a lot, and invisible Daleks just sent you off the scale, because Ian might have seen 2 on those cliffs and imagine more. But if there were invisible ones,
absolutely,
I mean, that's
fab. Where they were. Yeah, there was probably 400, and the other.
Because I have to say,
invisible. Yeah.
One of my earliest memories after Day of the Daleks was obviously Planet. And in that one, there were a lot of vivid memories. And one of them was when he's in that jungle. And of course, some of the plants are moving anyway with the Spiridons, but you don't know which ones are moving because of the Spiridons and which ones are moving because there's a Dalek there. And that really sets your brain on fire.
The best bit, though, was at the end of Frontier, the Doctor gets the Time Lords to send him after the Daleks. He lands on the Dalek planet, sees a Dalek, and goes, Daleks! It's like, you expect a crinoid, you know.
Well, he's not well. Give him a break. He's not well, is he? To be fair.
It's true, yeah.
But the thing you were saying, Paul, about, it's in the title, but it's still a reveal at the end of part 1. But I remember when it was Death to the Daleks, I'm a little kid. I couldn't read everything then. So my mum and dad, so they had me kind of sat in between them on the settee. And I didn't know, and it was Doctor Who, of course, and I'm sat there, but they were obviously looking at each other and they'd seen the title. And of course, I'm just watching it going, oh, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as they came out the spaceship, of course, I'm climbing on our mum's blooming neck because, and of course, so I think it helps the parents, doesn't it? Because they could see the title, think, aha, here we go. They're going to be scared. Absolutely shitless here. Here we go.
Yeah. It shows the power of Pertwee's ability to act as well here, doesn't it? As the Doctor, because we all know he hated the Daleks with a passion, and yet they gave him several stories to get over that. Starting with Day of the Daleks with that lovely gold version. I mean, goodness me, I'd love to see this model back again, because it's how beautiful. Yes, I know they were just painted again, but how beautiful with the gold Daleks of I mean, this was the leader at the time, but when you light them properly like this, don't they look stunning?
What is interesting, Day of the Daleks was the first colour Dalek story, and having watched the season 9 box set recently, there's some continuity, and it mentions the Dalek movie after the Time Monster. So in terms of chronology for us as fans of that age, that was the first time I saw the Daleks in colour. Didn't see them at the cinema because I was too young, but saw them in Day of the Daleks in colour. Then about 6 months later in the movie in the summer. So that was the first time we saw them properly in colour. So the gold one's a cracker, isn't it?
Yeah. It looks fantastic. Sadeko here is saying there is sadly a lot more they could have done with the invisible Daleks idea in Planet. And Richard is saying Planet of the Daleks is great. It really is. Even today, I think it stands up brilliantly. They travel to a planet to become invisible and then get stuck in their laboratory for creating a virus. Hubris indeed, and an echo in Genesis. Yeah, they're not always that clever, are they? We've got all that there. Oh, and Peter's saying, is the chase the only time Dalek is not used in the title? Doomsday.
Stolen
If
Earth.
the new stuff. Alex, what?
Stolen Earth.
Yeah. In the original series, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think, but the Dalek Invasion of Earth wasn't really technically called Dalek Invasion of Earth, was it? Was it?
No, they still had individual titles, didn't it? So it
and likewise, the Dead Planet was the Dead Planet. So, having said that, you didn't know what Dalek was at that point. To be fair,
and were they in the Space Museum as well?
Yeah, but that was an empty thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was the thing. It wasn't a Dalek story. Tardy Spider saying Day of the Dalek Special Edition is so good. I can't stand that new version. I can't stand it. The voice is great on me more than the original ones, and I just don't like it. It just doesn't work for me. Sorry, I'll stick with the original. But he does say, "I love that cape." Yes, I thought you might do actually. Not the Pertwee cape. There was a gold Dalek, says Simon. Nice to see you again, Simon. There was a gold Dalek in the BBC public canteen at TVC for quite a while.
Yeah, it's now known as Trump Dalek. Yeah, it's bright. Should have Trump on it. That's because we've
got Darren saying here, I love the moments when the Daleks find out the Doctor is around. They actually seemed afraid. In Resurrection, Doctor, did you say Doctor?
Yeah.
Is that in Resurrection?
That's in Day.
That's Day of the Daleks, yeah.
Yeah, Day of the Daleks. Yeah, that's right.
I actually quite like the dodgy Dalek voices in Day of the Daleks because it was something a bit different. They almost sounded more human, like they were evolving.
Yeah.
What did you?
Doctor? Did you say Doctor? That's it.
Yeah.
What did you all think though? Because when we've talked about the design and everything about the Daleks, it makes them special. Actually, when you notice voice changes, that's another thing as a kid. I was so used to the 70s Daleks, which had different voices in a way to the 60s ones where it was acted more. But it was the 70s voice that chilled me. And I noticed when we had Resurrection, it had changed slightly. Obviously, when I've properly seen Day of the Daleks, that's very different. And I just think, oh, God, the Genesis, Death of the Daleks, Planet of the Daleks, voice was spot on, and of course we're hitting Skelton, Michael.
Roy's the best. Yeah, Roy's the best.
Yeah, it's interesting the evolution of the Dalek voices, because when you go back and watch the Dead Planet and you move it on, I can understand why they did get it wrong, and I think Barry Letts actually did say, yeah, we got it wrong there, because they didn't know what they were doing. The Daleks hadn't been seen for so long, they weren't able to use them for so long. Then they get the permission to bring them back. They just didn't know what they were doing, and mistakes like that happens, in production techniques and what have you. But there is something, I agree with Alex, there's something charming about it, and I can't quite put my finger on why the voices in that story are quite charming, but it is quite, it
depends. It depends on the modulation, because bizarrely in Evil, you've got Peter Hawkins and Roy Skelton. I can't remember if David Graham's still part of that at that point, but they've upped the modulation a bit to make them a bit more rasping. And when the Daleks are in part 7 of Evil, from the audio, certainly you can really hear the real anger in the voice that they have later on in Genesis, which is fabulous.
Yeah, it's true. Sadeko24 is actually saying here, Roy Skelton for me is the definitive voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was quite a variation in the voices if you listen to the audio of Dalek Master Plan as well. At one point, they almost sound like movie Daleks.
A little bit, yeah.
With that echo, it's quite a variation. But I agree, the Planet of the Daleks, Death to the Daleks, and Genesis of the Daleks, particularly at the end, when you first see the Dalek and it meets the Doctor for the first time and says, "Alien, I must exterminate," that is quite different, quite nasally. Yeah. But then from that point on, it's absolutely nailed. I don't think they ever kept a proper record of the settings that they used.
Probably not.
Probably accounts for lots of different voices, because they just
because I was shocked when we'd had Resurrection, and I loved Resurrection, but when you got the Black Dalek talking into that globe and talking about the voice was so different. I remember I'd been so looking forward to them coming back, and it was the voice that I thought, oh no, it's not that, the voice you were just talking about then, Ian, that nasal one, that brilliant one.
Because
Brian Miller in Resurrection, it sounds I quite like the voice of it, but it sounds sort of muffled and a little bit strange. But I sort of like that because it also looked very different. I always thought there was something quite creepy about the white hemispheres on a Black Dalek. It's a fabulous design, so it deserves to have a slightly different voice.
Oh, I think that I love I think that's what they do. I think Mr. Briggs has been inspired by that in the modern versions, hasn't he? Because the Emperor that they've brought in the reboot is very booming, isn't it? It's very deep. The Supreme is on a different level. I must admit, though, I do miss the different variations, and Resurrection actually brings that out. It's
you need more than one voice actor for them.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's as though they've all got a different sort of hierarchy system, or a different, dare I say, character. I mean, you can't really have a character to a Dalek, but you know what I mean? It's as though it's a different blobbiness in there.
They were before they were blobs. They were different, so
yeah,
maybe.
The Dalek voices are very much like the incidental music You know, each Doctor Who story, you had a different composer, effectively. So you had different themes throughout the different stories, and you had different Daleks and different Dalek voices. Now you've got Nick Briggs and you've got Murray Gold, and it gets very samey, and you just lose that variety. You lose that personality of each individual creature.
It's like they've all been set on the same voice setting. Like there's a universal Dalek voice that applies to all the Daleks, and it's getting very tired.
Yes,
and you can get it through various online websites. I would imagine that particular voice. You know, you can go.
The bronze look is getting very tired.
But do you remember when they would get excited as well, especially with Roy? It would go higher and higher and higher and higher, and we all know that that cut from the Five Doctors where they forget to shout cut to him, and he's like exterminate. The poor guy must have burned down on that. Oh, I like this one from Gary. Hi, Gary. Gary's saying, I like the Dalek voices in the Peter Cushing movies. They're fantastic, aren't they? And when you're small, I remember watching that on a Saturday morning back when we were all kids, and I was terrified of those Daleks because they were bigger. They seemed to be a bit more powerful. They had this clipper thing going on here that could choke you, but it was the voice. It was really, I think, look at that now. It's absolutely fantastic.
Alex, you might be able to confirm this because in the movies they don't get credited, but it's Peter Hawkins and David Graham in the movies, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yep.
Yeah. Gary's also saying the Daleks
with all the echo as well. It was why is there so much reverb?
I don't know. I don't know.
It works so well though, I think.
Yeah. Accents in the Daleks. Today, I'm expecting, if they ever come back, because of course I'm sure they're problematic today, I'm expecting regional accents on every single Dalek, actually, from South London to Yorkshire, which I won't do an impression of that because two of them are on the panel. Right up here, I could see Muck Dalek coming in, like he did in the Wombles, remember? Muck Dalek, by the way. I'm going to get you, by the way.
Look at the Dalek in the chase, the one that's like, I can't really count. That was a crack of that, the thick Dalek, if I can say that.
I just try and pretend that moment doesn't exist in Dalek history.
Yes, yeah. Well, let's not talk about that particular.
There should be a Dalek in the corner with a dunce cap on, with a D on the back.
I wanted to talk about something. When I was chatting to Alex about putting the show together, you mentioned something that was really another part of your favorite element of the Daleks, and it was this. What got you about this as a wee man?
That was the only part of Doctor Who that ever genuinely petrified me.
And why was that?
Because it's so bloody gruesome.
What do you mean?
There, it's yeah. Because it was so unexpected. Natasha says, it's my father, the realization that he's becoming this, it's like a pile of sausages with a face. He's becoming this Dalek mutant. And it is just an absolutely hideous moment.
It's when the eyes open, that's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's when Doctor Who was at its best, wasn't it? We're talking 1985 and it's still not frightened to be able to do these elements, to be able to say, these Daleks, you should be frightened of the Daleks. And again, this was actually playing to the fan base, if you like, as well, because the Glass Dalek, of course, even I'd heard of the Glass Dalek at 15 years old, not really involved in the bigger picture of fandom at that point. It had been in a couple of the books. I'd heard some of the older fans who must have been, they must have been ancient, they must have been about 30, talking about Glass Daleks. And then suddenly, you're right, to get it filled with this. I mean, this was cracking makeup. It was absolutely vile. Let's turn it off. Ugh, that's vile.
I thought it was quite interesting how they obviously, at first I thought, well, why would they, his head's in an incubator unit. Why have they made it shaped like a Dalek? And then you realise it is a Dalek. So the casing obviously forms, is constructed or 3D printed or whatever they do, and it's transparent at first and then obviously solidifies. So it was a whole insight into Dalek technology at the same time. And I always really loved at the time, I really didn't like the cream and gold colour scheme. It really unsettled me. I was only 7 years old at the time. And now I really love that colour scheme.
What do you mean? What was unsettling to you? What do you mean by that?
I don't know. I think because I'd only known Daleks in grey or silver. So to have one in almost negative colours, it was just, whoa, this is really weird for a Dalek.
That's interesting.
I think when you realise that they've got mutated humans inside them, it almost made sense that they were a completely new colour scheme. And now I love that colour scheme. I think it's fabulous. And
it's one of the best.
Story as well.
I mean, they look great in Remembrance, don't they, in that colour scheme? Yeah. I remember at the time, some of the older fans on the fence, Alex, about this, or the gold and the white, they don't look mysterious. They're not going to look mysterious. They're not going to look, they're not going to be able to hide in the shadows. They don't look menacing enough.
I love that photo.
I can sort of get what they say, but in Revelation and again in Remembrance, they do. It didn't work. They were menacing. They did actually manage to hide in a sense, didn't they? But
it was right for the story, and I think the obviously in Revelation you've got sort of cream and gold, and then you've got the redesigned Imperial that's a slightly different design. It's a bit straighter and it's white and gold. It's an evolution of that design, and I think just having a brand new Dalek design, but that was still had all the right fundamentals of the classic design, just worked brilliantly. I have very vivid memories of watching episode 1 of Remembrance at the time and just being blown away by so many aspects of it, from the new CGI effects to the new Dalek design. It was just so top quality.
Yeah. I mean, you still had the traditional elements, didn't you, Ian? I mean, look at this.
Oh, yeah. But in the white and gold ones, you had a lot of changes. The eye stalk changed, the lights on the head, the sucker arm, and everything, and the slight change. It's slightly less angled at the front, but it was still, you would still recognize that silhouette. It was everything that the new paradigm wasn't, because they mucked around with that silhouette, which is why it just didn't work. And anybody that ever had any interest in Daleks would never really have done that. But they did.
Well, you've mentioned it.
Yeah, sorry.
Come on then. Let's talk about this. We're going to jump ahead. We're going to jump ahead several decades to talk about Victory of the Daleks quickly. And I was shocked, I think, when this happened. And they've become known now as the Teletubby Daleks, haven't they? And I can see why. But it's interesting that we only saw them once after, isn't it? Because the fan backlash to the change of the Daleks, I think we were all there, weren't we, to say, what have you done?
You do not fix what is not broken.
Yeah.
Can you say that again, please?
But I think I despised them at the time, and then I liked them a bit more when I met them for real at Sheffield Station one morning, because the props themselves were very impressive. But
as you do.
I'm glad that they've never really made much of a comeback, because it was just a mistake. You do not alter that Dalek silhouette. You don't alter the proportions, the size, the shape. You can do a lot with the detail on the existing design. It doesn't, that silhouette is the Dalek, and they just lost it by that change.
I was so angry when I watched Confidential straight afterwards, after Victory of the Daleks, and there was Moffat talking with Gatiss, and there was an arrogance I interpret it as arrogance, because Moffat could never say Dalek. He would always go Dalek, which irritated me as well, but then I was already gone at this point. And they were talking about it, and he said, if you're doing a Dalek story, you've got to redesign the Daleks, haven't you? And I was sat there thinking, no, you bloody don't. You don't mess with it. It is like you said, it ain't bust. Don't fix it, because all you've done is just produce this horrific abortion that should never have been. And yet they did it, and they thought it was good. It's like, how the hell? And then later on, Moffat saying, "Oh well, I never really saw it in time and didn't sign it off properly." It's like, yeah, you're backtracking now, because
The thing is, I mean, I know what you're saying, because I think we're all of a thought on this. The only one thing about these paradigm Daleks is they seemed, because it's Matt Smith tall, they seemed taller, and John Pertwee was tall, and he was always he towered over the Death of the Daleks, didn't he? And he made them a bit smaller in one respect. So I could see maybe what they were going to try and do, but I agree, don't mess with perfection. But the one kind of blotting the ointment really here is with our argument, Ian, not liking this change, is when we had Remembrance of the Daleks, we had the Special Weapons Dalek, didn't we?
Mm.
And I loved that. I loved the way
Oh,
you
yeah.
But that's because that was a single special Dalek.
Yeah.
But
That also sort of echoed the sort of thing you might have seen or imagined in the 60s comics. And it was just brilliant.
Yeah.
If they'd all turned up like that, I think we would have had other problems. But just as a one-off, yeah.
That was my problem with it. I love
things like that.
I loved the Special Weapons Dalek, but of course he was so invincible. I thought, well, why aren't they all with that gunpowder? That was the thing about it.
I've never even thought about that.
Well, the brilliant thing about the Special Weapons Dalek, of course, is if you read the fantastic novel that's still around today from Ben of Remembrance of the Daleks, of his own script, it's a dangerous mutant that the Daleks themselves are terrified of. This thing is just worse than the rest of them. And he's in a special casing to protect them as well as than him, because he's just a bubbling. And I love the fact that that was given a character. And that's why, he's just absolutely, it's incredible. I mean, if you haven't read Remembrance of the Daleks by Ben, go and read it.
The radiation backwash from the gun drove the Daleks ever more insane. So they couldn't all be like that, because they'd just be Fruit Loops. But yeah.
Sadeko was saying here, I don't know what Moffat was thinking. Do you know what? In hindsight, though, this is one of the things that we're going to actually treasure, because it didn't shake us to the core as certain other things that are going on right now as we're doing this. Look, here we go. Hang on, it's moved up again. He's also saying, that is why they call me the Abomination. That's from the book.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing, that's what got me thinking when I first read that book. This is a Target book with a difference. This is giving more character to some of these Daleks, to say, well, actually, they've been around a lot. They are mutating. They are evolving with everything that's going around them in their obsession to wipe out the universe, basically. And he's also
the other Daleks wanted to shoot it, but they didn't, because the Emperor decreed that it lived.
Yeah,
I think that book, and I love that, because you're right. It gave so much more character, so much more backstory.
Beautiful book. If you haven't read it, go and read it. Vasco. Hello, Vasco. Nice to see you. A lot of people forget the Ironside Daleks were a great new Dalek from that episode, but the Teletubby ones upstaged them by being terrible. So you've got to think, you like the Ironside Daleks, don't you, Paul?
Yes, I do. I do, actually. I like the episode up until the Teletubby Daleks arrive. I like this homage to Power of the Daleks with I am your soldier, all that kind of stuff. But I did actually love the moment when the Daleks are trying to be cunning by offering cups of tea to show how nice they are, which was a lovely, lovely touch, I thought.
Camp.
I'm very camp, yes. I'm a fan of Mark Gatiss' writing. I'm probably alone in this, but I like some of his episodes for Who, and this is one of my favourites, apart from the awful Daleks at the end. So at that moment with the cup of tea and using the plungers with a tray is fantastic. Like JT saying, very, very camp. But the actual, sorry, say that again.
A little Union Jack on the side as well.
Yeah, and then they've got the like a gun belt around their waist and stuff with bits
show
and
that
pieces
again.
in it. They've got ammunition, or it's like Chewbacca's gun thing that he has around his shoulder, kind of. It's a bit like that, for a Dalek. But they look great in the greys, don't you think? They look very obviously camouflaged Daleks, although the Union Jack stands out a little bit if it might be camouflage, but you'll see that coming. But they look great.
I suppose with this story, it was supposed to be suggesting that the Daleks are, to use the word you've used, they're cunning. I just didn't get it personally, and I still don't really get it at all. I just think, hang on a minute, what were they doing? It's so long since I watched it, I can't remember. But were they just waiting for the Doctor to turn up to zap him, and then they offer him a cup of tea? I mean,
apparently they were, because he had to, bizarrely, the bit of the story where they had to
use his voice or something,
testimony to prove that they were Daleks, so they could make new Daleks. It doesn't make any sense towards the end, to be fair. But,
it's almost like two-factor authentication. They'd lost their PIN, so they needed the Doctor's voice to authenticate.
You're quite right. You can see that I've sort of blanked elements of the reboot out of my head.
Dad's Army Daleks is right, definitely,
yeah.
This is where there's a battle between the Davros as a creation and then the Daleks on their own in the series, because the Daleks did have guile and cunning, And then, of course, you get to something like Destiny of the Daleks, where, of course, they needed Davros to break an impasse. But if they had guile and cunning all the way through and had that human instinct to think imaginatively, they didn't need Davros. But because of the creation of Davros, you suddenly put them slightly down a peg. I think it's always been the shame. Davros is fantastic as a creation, and he shouldn't be messed with. However, he does somehow, I don't know, diminish the Daleks after that, don't you think?
It's because it's easier for them to write, isn't it? I mean, Davros is easy to write. I mean, a lot of the writers came along all the time saying Davros actually has a character because he's not a Dalek. He's a Kaled. And he's still expressive. He's still got emotion, so he's easier to write. Whereas the Daleks, I think a lot of writers just didn't understand. You can't write them really as robots.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you look at David Whittaker, he wrote the Daleks really well and had cunning and guile, and they had characters. And part of the Daleks are very, very sinister. Likewise, in Evil, when they become humanized as well, that works so well. And the Daleks have got characters, so it can be done. It depends, like you say, how you treat them. They're not robots. They're intelligent creatures. They're a thing inside.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
As I say, I was watching Destiny in preparation for the show, and it's one of those stories. I love it. I can go back to it any time, so happily. I'm what? Can you guys? You just watch all four. It's one of those. It's proper entertainment, isn't it? You don't have to think too much. You can get into the story without knowing the Genesis story, really, which must have been brilliant for certain members of the audience coming through. It brings back certain memories for me of being so excited that September that Doctor Who was coming back, and it was starting with the Daleks, because we hadn't seen them since Genesis. But I love them. I don't mind the design flaws in some of these. I can overlook it because there's just something so homely about these episodes. I don't know.
They're brilliantly atmospheric. I think the fact that they didn't have much of a budget that's one of the episode's strengths, because they had to think very differently about how they shot things, how they lit things. And the Daleks, they're in quite a tatty state, but that also fits well with the fact they're in the middle of a battle. I prefer it to Genesis, to be honest. I think it's a brilliant story. Tom and Lalla are absolutely on fire. Douglas Adams' script is hilarious. It just ticks every box, even if it's a bit crap in places. You can have a fun game spotting all the costumes from other shows, or even other episodes, and and God knows what.
But when you see the costumes from other shows like Blake 7, etc., it was all those prisoners who were about to be exterminated, and that was one of the lethal things in that episode about the Daleks, which is they wanted Davros back, and until you give him back, we will just shoot somebody else dead. We will shoot somebody else dead. And it's that ruthless element to them. Yeah. And that was one thing that came out in Destiny that, maybe wasn't totally clear in Genesis, which I have to say, that's a masterpiece. But they were just, no, until you give him back, we'll kill somebody else. And no negotiation, no messing. And of course, we saw in that one, was that one of the first times, tell me if I'm wrong, when through the eye stalk you could see it was detecting footprints and stuff?
It is. Yeah. And that was a clever piece for 1978, 79 television, wasn't it? It's very effective. You look at it now and you think that looks like today's effects that they use for that, or whatever is going to be happening here. Thanks for all your comments, everybody, for saying, you agree with us about Destiny. The interrogation of Romana is frantic and great. And you know what? Even as a 9-year-old, it was quite scary.
Oh, yeah. Just before that, the cliffhanger for part 1's a great opening episode. But it's got, again, one of my favourite cliffhangers with Daleks is when they come through the sugar glass wall.
And smash through it.
They capture Romana, and then in part 2 she get interrogated. But that bit when they do not move, fantastic stuff. And as a kid, was like hair-raising.
Yeah.
What can I say?
The build up to that, where Romana was going along and the wall was vibrating, you knew something was going to happen. Scared the hell out of me.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I can understand that. I remember vividly thinking, what is this? But it goes back to what you were saying, Paul, earlier. They leave they're in the title. It's a Dalek story, and you can feel their presence. The anticipation for anybody watching is, when do they come in?
When?
And I didn't realize that there's this tradition of bringing them in from Terry Nation at the end of the first episode. So of course that was a
so
shocker.
clever. So
It
clever.
was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Bang, you know, you come in, but my goodness.
Well, it's a really atmospheric story as well, because there's no actual music in it, only in places. Most of the time, it's just sort of drones and very sort of dark ambient soundscape instead of the typical sort of BBC orchestra music.
Yeah,
the thing about that one was I was 11 then, so I shouldn't be scared of the Daleks. But I remember because of the Dalek command center, so to speak.
Yes.
It had just certain boards, and so basically they could sneak and appear from anywhere. It wasn't a closed set. It didn't feel like it. So, and of course, there was a moment when, as you know, right from behind Tom Baker, there was a Dalek, do not move. And of course, absolutely screeched at him, and he jumps, doesn't he? Obviously, good acting, but he jumps, which is, it sneaked up on him. Whereas if you think of most of the Dalek command centers, they are a proper kind of set. Whereas this one felt like there was blackness and they could just whirl around anywhere, which had me on tenterhooks because you didn't know when they were just going to appear. Because him and Lalla Ward are sneaking around, but you just don't know when they're just going to arrive. There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah,
but I think in that story as well, you see, I don't think they'd used that camera angle before at that point. I know they did it in Daleks in Manhattan, but that low down, almost like camera fixed to the Dalek base, looking up as they were coming through. I think that was just before they confronted the Doctor when he said, "If you're superior race of the universe, try climbing after us."
Yeah,
it was that low camera angle. I mean, genius. Which showed that the set had a roof. You know, it's normally swamp, isn't it? And this was, you just never saw that angle. It was just brilliant. Brilliant.
There's so much in that episode that it's just a joy to watch when you watch that story, isn't it? Really, and of course it does bring in another ace, the Movellans, which changes the Daleks, our understanding of the Daleks, because you find out that they've been having this war, if you like, with the Movellans for a couple of 100 years, or wherever it is, and not a shot has been fired because they're both working logically. I mean, how brilliant was that to bring that element into the Daleks' psyche? You know,
that'll be why the Movellans' costumes immaculately white.
Yeah,
there's been no battle.
Yeah, yeah. Sadeko24 is saying here they were making use of Steadicam, I think, for the first time in that story,
and it looked good.
Yeah, it really did. And also, we'd seen the point of view shots from the Dalek eye stalk before, but Destiny was the first time we saw them able to use infrared.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah, because the eye stalk in Death was terrible, wasn't it? It was like a bog roll. You were looking through a bog roll. That was not a bog roll.
Well, it was people, but you know what Alex was saying there about Destiny. You're right. The soundtrack, for once, the music is hardly there, but you've got that beautiful element of the old BBC Radiophonic Workshop and Dick Mills doing what he does best with the sound. So you've got that hum. That sort of, you know, I've said this before. I can't remember any of the reboot Who episodes actually having alien atmospheres like classic Who did. You know, that's a sort of stuff. And Peter's mentioning it here. Peter's mentioning here, Paul, the background sound and hum adds to the atmosphere more so than any music. You don't need it really, because when you're out on the planet of Skaro, you can hear the atmosphere. It's stunning stuff. It's beautiful. Go on, Paul.
I was going to say it's like that, and they got the fantastic Dalek heartbeat of the control room, which is really creepy, and that adds to it as well. They brought that back in New Who. I remember there's a trailer for season 3 for Daleks in Manhattan, and they had a little shot of Dalek Sec, and they played the heartbeat of the Daleks. That was fantastic. That was so good.
All right, I love it. Remember the Doctor Who sound effects album?
Oh yes.
And you got the Dalek control. I used to drive my mum and dad mad with that Dalek control room. So it would be on. Nope, needle back to the beginning. Needle. Oh, honestly, Alex, they'll tell you it was like, you know, pretending I was in the Dalek control room when I'm playing with a Palatoy talking Daleks. You know, building things out of toothpaste boxes for them to push and all this. Oh, happy days. You know, it's just going back again. This used to terrify me. Just the silhouette. Now, this, of course, is from Genesis, and this is this is a moment I remember right to now, because this scared me. To see them just about to come through the door like this.
Those shots were gorgeous.
Weren't they? I mean,
the 5 Doctors.
Yeah. and it's something that has always through my life now. I don't think the Daleks look right without a good corridor. There's something about these sort of old-fashioned BBC corridors that get me. It fits the Daleks completely.
Absolutely.
That's why Planet of the Daleks and Genesis, to me, have absolutely won me over. I do seem to want that kind. You mentioned the tank. I want that military grey, that kind of, they're military, so therefore it's that colour. That, to me, as a kid, that's what scared me. In the dark corridors. I mean, in Genesis, when, as you know, the Doctor's running to get out of the bunker before they blow it up, and they are charging him down, and the music's building, and you as a kid, you just know in those corridors against a Dalek, you're stuffed because there's nowhere to hide. There's no furniture to hide behind, nothing. And so those unremitting corridors, it's a good idea for Terry Nation to do. And I know it's in the original, but Planet, for me, when you go down to the basement, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
They always have to cut through a door. You need a bit of that. And I know he repeats, but who cares? It's a good adventure, and it builds tension. But, corridors and hiding in corners, and you've only got seconds before you lift off or you're stuffed. All that is fantastic. And so I agree with you. Putting them in a time corridor, putting them in, in the railway, bridge, putting them in a metal corridor, a clash of symbols, and I'm away with it.
Yeah.
I have to say, I like claustrophobic locations with Daleks, but I do like a location. Daleks on location look great. Yeah. One of my other favourite moments is a bit from Planet, is when Taron and the Doctor are wrestling with the Dalek outside where the ice volcanoes and ice pools and stuff, and that works so well. And I don't know why. It might be because that's the cover of Planet of the Daleks in the Target book version.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Image of fighting away is a great image. I love that, and it looks really good. I wish there was more of that on location in Planet, because like with Death as well, when they're going through the sand dunes and stuff, it looks really good. Love all that location stuff.
Planet of the Daleks was the first Target book I ever read. I remember finding it in the junior school library, and it blew me away that they got Doctor Who books that I could loan and read, and there was this amazing bit of Dalek artwork on the front, and that really that bit of Chris Achilleos artwork taught me how to draw Daleks. And I read the book and loved the book, and it was years. It wasn't until the 90s when I finally saw the TV version, which was a massive disappointment by and large. But those location shots are fabulous, and I always remember seeing the Daleks omnibus book with a lot of those stills in. They just look so good, and it is a shame that they only had that one little scene actually shot on location for that serial.
Alex, as someone who you are an artist and you've done a lot of illustrations, etc., etc., why is it that artists love taking on the Daleks to draw? Because every artist that we've had, they love it. Achilleos was, of course, up there with that. He would love doing that. You had Jeff Cummins as well. But a lot of artists there that said, yes, got to take on. What is it about the shape or the structure of them that an artist finds, interesting to draw?
I have no idea. I think it's the same. It's the same with anything. When you're an artist and you're inspired by something, you want to reinterpret it. You want to draw it. You want to do your own version of it. And the Daleks are such a fascinating shape and a massive, they're an absolute pain in the ass to draw. They're really difficult things. So it becomes, I think it becomes an obsession to try and draw the best one you can. So every time you draw a Dalek, you try and beat the previous one, or that sort of thing. I think it's difficult to say, but once you've got the bug to try and do it, you just keep at it.
It's amazing, isn't it? The one that became iconic was the Death of the Daleks Dalek drawing with the explosion.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. And also, of course, the first Target novel as well. One of the first Target novels, Doctor Who: An Exciting Adventure with the Daleks, where the interpretation, it didn't matter that it wasn't. I mean, I think as a little boy, I did notice, that's not the Dalek I've seen on the telly, but it didn't matter because it was still a Dalek. And again with the Day of the Daleks one, that's beautiful, and that is iconic. Yeah. That has gone beyond iconic, that particular one, hasn't it? Because it's everywhere now. And it still looks good. We've had it on the magazine, we've had it on audio covers, we've had it on various books, we've got it on leaflets. It still looks bang, doesn't it? Got it over there in a frame. Still looks good. It's just amazing. Gary Bryant is saying to us here, the grey Daleks have the German army uniform look from World War II.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Gary, that you say that, because those grey Daleks in Genesis of the Daleks were the first Daleks I'd actually seen on television as a 4 or 5-year-old. And for me, this is always going to be the look of the Dalek. This is the color scheme that they should always be. I don't mind things like the remembrance stuff and stuff like that. But if somebody says Dalek, this is what I immediately think. Although I do like the Death to the Daleks color scheme. I quite like that one as well.
I love them. Yeah.
But this is mine.
Yeah.
This is the one that terrified me. What is it about that?
I mean, there's everything, but there's even the eye stalk. I mean, that and even the blue, but the eye stalk is like a billiard ball with an eye on it. It's just, they really are shiny. And I just think the eye stalk, the 3 light blue kind of grills behind it, and the military grey, to me, I don't know, it's probably, what's your favorite Doctor, the one you were when you were a kid? These to me are Daleks. These are uncompromising Daleks. I do like all these colours, but I always sometimes wonder whether we're turning them into something else. I understand why they were that colour in that story and beyond, but I think the military grey is, it's the Second World War. We've got the Panzer Division tanks, and there's that element to it.
I love the fact Richard's saying here, the Daleks are fun to draw. I probably would never get them right. I wouldn't worry about that now, because we've seen what the BBC can do as well.
Partly why they're so popular with kids, because you can draw roughly something that looks like a Dalek as a kid and know what it is on a piece of paper. So it's quite a striking image and easy to draw for kids. I don't mean in detailed form like yourself, Alex. I mean something that's done that's as a kid just playfully. It's so easy to draw, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, one missed trick. I mean, I have to say, I'm talking about the military grey because of the battle, but when Dalek, the episode with in 2005 came back, that Dalek, the first one, before it was touched by Rose, the battle-worn Dalek. I loved that. It's a shame you never saw a series with the battle-worn Daleks from the Time War. I like that kind of beaten, battle-worn Daleks.
Of course they would be. They've been knocking about in all sorts of trouble and fights, and there would be battle scarred, wouldn't they?
Mm.
Well, this one had also been, in the context of the story, experimented on, hadn't it?
Mm.
I mean, when it came to were you guys, I remember being very, very excited with this story. Oh, the Daleks are going to be back in Doctor Who. We haven't seen them on television for years and years and years. I'm not counting that thing, of course, in '96. So you have all this element here, the excitement, the coverage they were getting. I even forgive the fact that they turned up bronze, which I've never really been a fan of. But I quite like the structure. I like the film light thing going on here, the indicators going on there. And they looked as they wanted them to. They did look a bit solid. But I wasn't expecting the context of the story, but it did add another layer on, didn't it, to where the Daleks are? I mean, I never ever thought I would feel sorry for a Dalek. By this point, of course, we're all ingrained in Dalek culture. They're part of our fandom. We've actually seen them in conventions and stuff like this. This was a real twist, wasn't it? That episode Dalek.
I think it was.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
So carry on, Ian. Sorry.
No, it's Alex. Go ahead, Alex.
Alex, sorry.
I think it was a bit of a game changer, and it was moving, it was new, it was different, and for me, it's the only point in New Who history where they've got the Dalek story right. I think everything else, they just don't know what to do with them anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas that, it was original, it was different, it was terrifying, but it really got you as well.
What they did with it really was to bring the Daleks back in style and make them scary again. And they broke all the cliches that people kept saying, well, there's a plunger, they can't get upstairs, blah, blah, blah. And with that, the guy coming in, the character who was torturing the Dalek when he gets him by the sink plunger and suffocates him, fantastic stuff. And then the Daleks climbing stairs for the second time. Not the first time.
Yeah, that always grated on me. I mean, it should show that, this whole myth of the Daleks not being able to go upstairs. And I remember going around to people saying, excuse me, it was done in 1988. And the looks of horror from people, what? Yes, where were you? Watching Corrie. As a fan, it used to get to me, stop that. They've done it before. But I don't, if Kirsty's still in the chat, and anybody that came into the series with the new series, I want to know as well, when you first saw a Dalek in 2005, did you realize that this thing was a real big deal in Doctor Who lore? or did you not? Or were you completely mystified? If you're in there and this was your first Dalek, please let us know, because I am genuinely very interested. Because we all know this was a huge episode. And they really made a big deal, as Alex was saying there. They really made a big deal.
Well, that moment in the rain when the Dalek fires the laser, the Dalek gun at the floor, and everyone gets electrocuted. That is so nasty, so Dalek-like.
But they were proving there
the ruthlessness of that, and it's their thinking. Yeah, and what I've got, there's water on the Dalek. He's not moving. He's not speaking. Everybody's wondering what's going to happen, and the viewers are. But of course, it's just factoring it all in. And of course, in a way, it built it up nicely for the climax of that series. But in another way, and to give us all what we thought we wanted, which is millions of Daleks. However, what we then realized is actually you just want one. It's like in the series climax, that one that was outside and exterminated, that I've forgotten her name, the one who was in the Big Brother, franchise.
Linda with a Y.
Yeah, when you could see his light bulbs going, saying exterminate. I mean, that was chilling, but you just needed one, didn't you? That one can do anything. It's like the special weapons Dalek. It thinks. It's almost because in that episode you always had that kind of that bulletproof force field, which I haven't seen.
Yeah. Well, we've got that here from Vasco. Ian, we'll come to you in a second. I've always hated that the Dalek shield they added. Even growing up, the Daleks will never be battle worn again if they keep having pointless shields. Interesting point.
I mean, I've not had it since, have they?
It depends if they can break the shield, like Orsini did with the bastic-headed bullets or whatever kind of thing.
I don't know. It's very odd to say, isn't it? I can't remember. I remember the effect being fantastic, and I thought, oh, that's different. Ian, what were you going to say? Sorry.
No, I was going to say it's in Dalek, and it was sad and scandalous that Rob Sherman never wrote again for the series.
Well, yeah,
too true.
But, they were proving what Troughton had already said way back in Power of the Daleks. One Dalek will be the end of the colony. That's all it takes. Yeah. And then he echoed it by saying, what's the nearest city? Population 1 million, all dead.
All dead.
And the Dalek went on to prove it. And it was just a Dalek tour de force with one Dalek. It was genius.
Yeah, that's the only episode that has just got the one Dalek in. All the other Dalek stories, you've got an army of them, whereas that just carried it all.
Yeah.
His gun turned around completely 180 degrees, didn't it? I mean, that's what was all these new gadgets that I suppose that always had been there, but had not been able to be realized. So you had this Dalek that could turn one way down the corridor, shoot them, turn that way, shoot them. You could see where you only needed one. And I would contest that's the most lethal we've seen any Dalek in the whole 60 years. And I would also contest sometimes because of CGI and the numbers now, and also this hybrid effect and other stuff that they've brought into it, that they've diminished what is there for them as a story writer. One Dalek, as you've just said, can wipe out a colony.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
They should never have made them fly, because flying Daleks just look ridiculous.
Well,
floating and hovering, I can get on board with, but flying is just stupid.
I'm sorry, Alex. I've always flown ever since the '60s comics. What can I say? That's
they had hoverbouts in the '60s.
On the hoverbouts, yeah.
I mean, flew with them though.
Yeah,
when they did those in more than 30 years in the TARDIS,
yes,
they looked brilliant.
That was brilliant.
They should have stuck with that, but no, they were thinking, no, we can do this with CGI. Let's just do it.
It's amazing.
Smart asses, really.
Well, Ian, it's amazing where you look at what was going on towards the end of the original series' run, and the public just disengaging slightly and gently, and going and having lives and going to garden centres and getting mortgages and all this sort of stuff and dealing with real life. It seems to be happening again now. And when you look at the fantastical elements of the, I say story loosely, that's going on in the show now as well, it's as though history's repeating itself sometimes. The Daleks have been, I understand why they've been overused. I do agree with Alex. I don't think they've been used properly. I think they've been harmed in a sense by the overuse, because you're familiar with them now. You know what they can do. It's coming along with a new edge now. Even JNT said when he started, the Daleks need a little bit of a rest, and it took him years to get them back into Doctor Who. It was 1984 before we saw them again. That was what, 5 years between that and Destiny. but when they came back, bang, they got you with a big power. Now they don't have that sort of, in my opinion, I don't think they have that pull anymore, because they've just been.
Well, you haven't got science. They're not picking science fiction writers all the time, so they certainly don't know what to do with a Dalek. And I know we want to be cheerful and celebratory tonight, but if you're going to bring back an arch enemy, if you're going to bring back a classic monster, understand its history. Don't tamper and do stupid stuff just for the sake of being different. Be a science fiction writer and understand what the hell it is. Because if you understand what a Dalek is, you don't need gadgets.
I don't think you can have science fiction writers today, though, because I think it's problematic. I think it takes them to areas where they don't want to go.
That's a big part of the problem.
Well, it is, isn't it? Because science fiction...
It's a science fiction show.
Yeah. I mean, and science fiction, to some, can be offensive, as we know. Problem being is saying here, Dalek brought about the second Dalek mania. It blooming well did. Look at all this in my blooming room here. I've got more Daleks now than I ever had. If my 7-year-old self could see this now, he'd die. He'd faint. He'd just die of shock, because this was all the stuff. And this is part of the reason I bought all this stuff when it started coming out. Problem being in 2004 and onwards. I wanted all those Daleks because I didn't have as many Daleks as I've got now, because all I had was a Palatoy talking Dalek, which had to double up like the BBC ones for thousands of them. You know, the poor thing was put in all sorts of places, in the garden, in the car, you know, all sorts of adventures. But now you just, I mean, goodness me.
What was everybody's first Dalek toy?
The Palatoy talking Dalek for me.
Mine was the Louis Marks, the yellow one that came out in the 70s.
Are you that old?
I'm that old, yeah, sorry. and it used to same as the 60s version, but it's a 70s color. There's a yellow one and a red one that came out. I had the yellow one, and it used to bump into things, and you'd let it roll around the carpet and bump into the sofa. Yeah. Do you have one of those as well? Did you? Okay.
Yeah, I had the red
You're not as old as me then. That's fine. That's okay.
Yeah, and I remember that war game. I wish somebody would tell me what it was called, but there was a Dalek board game with little mini Daleks, like
War of the Daleks.
War of the Daleks, yeah.
Oh,
War of the Daleks, classic.
Yeah, loved that.
Yeah, it's a classic one. I've still got mine. The box
was the Dalek shampoo or bubble
what?
bath?
Well, there was Dalek everything. There was that, but probably right. I mean, there was everything. We've got these here. You know, there's the Palatoy on the right. We've got the classic at that point, Dennis Fisher one, which is very sought after today.
I used to have that one.
The Lewis Mark one's there. We've got a Sevens one there from the 80s, which you had to build, and we've got the character options one there. But that was just the tip of the iceberg, you know. So probably is absolutely right when they came back. And you know what got me about it as well? It showed me the power of the Daleks, because it was helping Doctor Who again to continue. Do you know where I'm coming from on that? If it hadn't been for that Dalek episode and then the reveal at the end of that first series, it's debatable, because it was the Daleks again that came to the Doctor's aid, like it did back in the original series in 1963 into 64. It was the power of the Dalek. And what did all the people go for? They went for the toys, didn't they? They went for the Dalek toys, the Dalek backpacks, the Dalek. Oh, I could go on forever. Amazing.
All the Dalek cutouts, because I'm sorry, I'm the Weetabix kid. And I loved all the monsters, but it was the John Pertwee TARDIS console. I think, was it the Planet of the Daleks? There was another scenescape that I think was Planet of the Daleks, meant to be. And then you got all the cardboard creatures, but it was the Daleks I wanted.
Everybody wanted them, yeah. I mean, to see that, I mean, we had certain elements when we were kids, but to see it all coming into from 2005 onwards to today. You know, you're still able to get certain Dalek merchandise around today. Let's have a look here. Piece is saying the beautiful 12-inch remote control Enterprise Productions Dalek are well worth getting, but so expensive now. And the bronze toys took them into the stratosphere. Well, totally, because they are totally collectible, those original ones. These, of course, are the Product Enterprise ones as well. These little ones, absolutely gorgeous.
They were done so well, weren't they?
Copyright struck there now, GT.
Look at them all. Aren't they beautiful? Product Enterprise. And then the big ones that go with them are quite scary the way they trundle along as well. They're absolutely gorgeous. What's this? Sadeko saying that Linda's death was chilling. It was like you could hear the exterminate, but at the same time, that's very true from the end of that first series. Yeah, you saw the lights go on the outside, didn't you? And you just, you're in trouble, love, and you're not getting out of this one.
Linda was a lovely character as well, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yes, but you knew she was going to. You knew she was going to get the chop, didn't you?
It
You just
shows
knew.
you how
Dalek fodder, yeah.
Which shows you how famous the Daleks were, even with their war cry "exterminate," because it was chilling and we didn't hear it.
Yeah, Pete's saying here the first time in remembrance that the skeleton of Ray effect was magical. It was. I remember the fantastic beaming. I mean, that was that night when you're watching Remembrance, and that happened. That effect. You just thought, this is Doctor Who coming into the new era now. They've had that element. It was gorgeous, that effect.
Within that story, we're just talking about seeing inside the Dalek when the Dalek was the transmat, and you could see the whole of the Dalek, couldn't you? The whole diagram of it was
that
there.
was fascinating.
Yeah. Lovely, yeah.
Well, Alex is, as I say, Alex is. I'm delighted that Alex has been able to join us and contribute tonight because he is a massive Dalek fan. He is unfortunately, sadly, now having to go off and have his life. But give us a plug for your latest ebook, please, Alex. Tell everybody where you can get that.
Yeah, earlier this year I released an ebook called Evolution of the Toy Dalek, which, as the title suggests, is a history of toy Daleks from 1963 to present day. Doesn't cover absolutely everything, and it is focused just on the toys, not the wider merchandise, but it's got over 300 photos in it, most of which was purpose taken for the book. It's got some great contributions. It was a labour of love project, and it's free to download on my Who website, which is 70.net. So you can read all about my childhood longings for toy Daleks and stuff there. So,
and it's a great read as well. And also, if you go onto the Merchandise Paradise playlist here on the channel, you can see Alex and myself chatting all about that and geeking out. You can get all the details to it there because it's a cracking and it's free of charge. So thank you for that, Alex. And it's lovely to see you. You're welcome at any time, my friend. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, everybody.
Take care of yourself. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. What have we got? We'll go back to the chat here, shall we? Problem being is agreeing with myself here. And what we've got here, problem being is saying, same JT, I've gone mad buying the character options figures. You know, I'm worn out with it, problem being, because these things behind me, the B&M collection, I am so glad now that I'm finished. Because I can't be bothered going through that anymore. No more for me. The Daleks were the end. I'm not having any more of them, I tell you.
Can I ask Ian, what kind of Dalek do you have behind you? I can't quite make out which one it is.
This one, the big one.
Yeah. It's a Dalek Sec. Oh, I am jealous as hell. Dalek Sec is my favourite new series Dalek. Amazing.
Look at that. Isn't it gorgeous? Where'd you get that then?
My infinitely better half got me that for my 40th.
Now that's a present. If you're watching this and your other half is going to be 40 or 50 or 60 and you're thinking what to get him and he's a Doctor Who fan, a Dalek always works.
No, it certainly
I'm going to tie my wife to a chair and force her to watch this programme because I'm 60 in 3 years' time. So.
Ian, did you know what it was? Ian, did you know what it was when it was wrapped up?
Did you think? Hang on a minute.
I have a little one here.
Oh, we've heard. Yes. Oh, you mean Dalek?
We had a do
Dalek Sec as well. Yes.
Yeah. In a pub, and she had a couple of my friends come, and they were going to take me there. Everybody else was already there, but they had to keep me later. This was number 6 from This Planet Earth. But it was the first one that they actually released because they agreed to release it early for my birthday. They came down and set it up in the pub where we were having it. So I got there last and walked in, and there it was. And honestly, there may have been a bit of emotion.
There may have been. So Yorkshire. That's a lovely story, and it's lovely to be able to see Dalek Sec. Do you actually call him Dalek Sec?
I do. Yeah. I do.
Oh.
And you know what? Sometimes you just catch yourself just. I've had him a long time now. You know, you just stare at it and you think there is just. Your design is perfect.
And he looks perfect. But he's well lit behind you as well. He's dark and sinister. He's very brooding there. It's horrible.
Yeah, it really is.
I remember the
when the lights
BBC
change colour.
I remember the BBC cocking up. Remember when they put it on an award show and you saw it before it was broadcast? That was fantastic. So such a great Dalek. Amazing. Black just suits it so well.
It does. I think black works far better than bronze. Although you only
Oh,
really want
gosh.
one black Dalek, but I'd love to see them. The gunmetal. I know Genesis looks great, although when you see the production photos, they're slightly off green, and I think that's how it interacts with the lights. But for me, it's the really dark gunmetal grey from Planet of the Daleks. That's the one for me. That's the perfect. I'd love to see that livery. I really would.
It's goodness knows what we're going to get next if we ever get them at all. But when you look at the new design, I mean, these work because this is from Day of the Doctor, and they said Day of the Daleks then, Day of the Doctor, and they dumbed them down slightly. They took the really big bronze effect down to make them look like they were in battle in where. So this gives a sort of hint of what they could look like if they were darker, you know. In that design, and I think the one at the front particularly works.
I think they worked well in that story because they didn't really talk that much. They were just advancing through Gallifrey or whatever, killing people. Yeah, and it was just brilliant. Nowadays, they just do too much of this. It's
And they also had a lovely, as Brenda was talking about in Dalek, in Day of the Doctor, the Daleks in that had a lovely battle-worn look about them. They looked like they were greasy and dirty and looked really like they've been in battle, which is lovely.
What's also good is when you get a director who wants to do something with them. We were talking about Destiny in that lower shot. But of course, Graham Harper, when he had a lot of Daleks, and of course, what you just said, Ian, sometimes Dalek dialogue for too long, it doesn't work, does it? But he was cutting the shots and they were moving at different angles. And I thought Graham Harper really tried hard to keep that dialogue interesting by cutting his shots and the movement around.
Yeah, I mean, Graham did. I agree. Graham did a fantastic job with the fact that actually, if you look at the story now, he's got two different factions there, and he sort of. This might be the way I'm looking at it, but he does film them in different ways. There's a sort of, I'm going to use the word gliding element to the Davros' Daleks as they're known in that episode, aren't they? There's a sort of, and when the other one comes in, when the Skaro Daleks come in, it's as though he ups it a bit and he makes it more tense, more action packed. It is when you go and watch it again, when you watch that story again, really look at that, because Graham Harper sort of really makes you understand the incoming Daleks, the grey ones, are a threat. It's very interesting. Go and have a look at it.
I think it makes a difference, doesn't it, if you get a good director working with the Daleks, because not everyone has shot them that well. Sometimes they're shot badly, but I think my favourite, Douglas Camfield and Dalek Master Plan, really captures the Daleks, and it just shot brilliantly anyway. He's got lovely imagery in it anyway, but the way he shoots the Daleks in Master Plan is so good. Yeah. And there's a bit that I didn't mention in my suggestions, DC, about my favourite bits, but there's a bit in part 2, Day of Armageddon, when the Dalek is speaking to Mavic Chen and he bangs his plunger on the table to indicate sort of frustration, and it works so well. It's such a great way of using the plunger. It works so well.
Absolutely. I've got a message for you here, Ian, from Problem Being, who says he's available to be adopted.
Well, I've adopted twice already, but I'm always up for a third one.
He only wants the Dalek.
I know.
It's fickle. And Gary is talking about, don't forget the stolen Daleks on Blue Peter. I think we may have talked on that on our Blue Peter show. I can't remember because it was a while ago. But yeah, I mean, it was when the Daleks cropped up on Blue Peter as well. That's the other reason that we grew up with them, because Blue Peter did a hell of a lot. I mean, they always got the link with Peter Purvis, of course, and he must have been fed up seeing the blooming Daleks coming on the set in Blue Peter, mustn't he? For 14 years he was on that show. But they always did. And that's what must have kept it alive for all of us as a generation that saw it in Genesis and then back in 79 with Destiny twice.
They would show you clips as well, wouldn't they? Which was your only opportunity to see the older stuff. They'd show you Daleks from Hartnell. I mean, my God, that was just, unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, but it was amazing. I remember seeing the Dalek bubble bath in various places, especially at Christmas. It was next to the Mateys. Yeah. And I had a couple of
the yellow
with the yellow top.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And I don't know where they went to, but I remember getting two. I remember getting one for Christmas, and then another one that I had to get my mum to buy me, and that added to the Palatoy talking Dalek. But the Palatoy talking Dalek was the Emperor in my games because the other two were smaller. The stuff we used to get up to as kids.
Like, and they could have your War of the Daleks figures and have them further away from perspective Daleks. That kind of thing.
Well, the War of the Daleks ones weren't accurate, but they did have the hook. They had that little hook. I'll have to show you one day on the show. The other thing that was, the Lego hands now, aren't they?
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, that happened. I want to mention this was they had stage appearances, didn't they? And I was absolutely thrilled in 1989 when I got to see the Daleks on stage in the Ultimate Adventure, and they were these huge, big, clunking things. And of course, I'm a 19-year-old fan going, "That's not right."
You weren't the only one.
Well, we're not.
Yeah.
But how critical were we? I mean, that doesn't look right. But the colour scheming was gorgeous.
They got the Dalek
very
Emperor.
Dead Planet-like, aren't they?
Yeah. What was that, Ian?
They got the Dalek Emperor right.
Yeah.
They did get the Dalek Emperor right. There he is there.
But,
Yeah.
I saw John Pertwee in Birmingham, and I saw Colin Baker in Bradford.
Yes.
And I mean, look at the lights on that black one as well. The square.
Oh. Yeah, because I don't think they were making minis anymore, were they? Because they couldn't get the mini lights, so they had to go to the next one up.
I felt really sorry for the actors in this because the stage is raked, so it's at an angle. So if they're going downhill in a Dalek, God help them.
Yeah. But I mean, it was great to see these things though on a stage show back in '89, and it was state of the art. I mean, now you probably look at it and you think it was quite primitive, but at the time it was, wasn't it? It was state of the art with lasers. It was just fantastic, and there were songs in it.
Yes. Oh dear.
It was Doctor Who does Panto. You can't beat a bit of business as business. It's a great song.
Well, it is, yeah, but look where we're heading.
Yeah, well, you are. Yeah.
But the Daleks got there first. They were all chanting there, saying "Knees up, mother." No, they weren't. No. But I mean, it was great to actually see that story, and the Cybermen and the Daleks on the same stage as well. At that particular point, you had the two interpretations from the two various actors, Pertwee and Baker. The story was solid. The Daleks came through on that, and by God, do you remember, Ian? They were fast, weren't they, on that blooming stage?
They whizzed around like nobody's business, and they certainly had a stage presence, definitely.
Yeah,
they really did.
Yeah, and you do know, even though I was sitting there as a 19-year-old, cocking me, going, "That's not right." I loved every second of it. By the way, that's why I saw it twice. Loved every second of it. But for a fact the reason they were big is so that lot up there could see them, or people back there, because these theatres, believe it or not, were packed. They were packed full of people.
They were.
Yeah, remember, Ian? The two times I went in two different theatres. Sold out completely. A load of it, of course, with scarf wearing, velvet coat wearing, frilly shirt wearing weirdos. Yeah, but but Joe Blogg's Public in there as well, showing again the draw of your two leads, but the Daleks. Amazing stuff. If you went to see it, let us know.
There's a video knocking around somewhere because it was the early days of home video, wasn't it? And I'm sure somebody had a video camera there. There is a VHS, or there was a VHS knocking around. I
think I don't know if we'll get told off, but you can watch it on the very YouTube.
Yeah, allegedly there are two versions. One of Colin Baker. And interesting, it takes you back to the 80s when you got pirate videos. It's that kind of quality. Super.
And they're not supposed to be in there, of course, because remember there was that announcement on the show saying, you're not to film it, you're not to take photographs, anything like this. So somebody's obviously like this one. Very dodgy. What have we got here?
They weren't very small in those. They're like the big cameras that Del Boy's got. That kind of really.
That's right. Yeah. Well, they were huge. Why were you disappointed when you went to see the Ultimate Adventure? Problem being, I need to know. Pete Harrington is saying, I wonder if the Emperor from this is still knocking around. I don't think it probably is, but there is a wonderful looking Emperor, which is a little bit bigger than that one from Connor, and he's chasing it around.
Was that the one?
It was at Blackpool. Yeah. It was Invasion Blackpool.
I was going to mention him because honestly, that I've not seen the play that you're talking about, but when we went to Blackpool and you arranged that, when he came, and it took him a while, didn't it, to set that up, and it was all electronic and everything, wasn't it? It was fab.
It was amazing, and you might have seen him now because he's been on tour with the thing as part of the Carnival of Monsters, it's called, and you can find him on Facebook as well if you haven't seen it. You can have a look at the Carnival of Monsters. I'm sure that's his Facebook. But he built this Emperor Dalek, and since we saw it back in April, he's added all the tubey things up to the ceiling on it. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
But it's also very funny when he puts it back in the van to take away. I love to see a Dalek put in the van.
Yeah. Oh, right. Problem being said you went to the opening show at Wimbledon. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, they had problems with that opening show, didn't they?
All the time. Technical issues and stuff like that, wasn't it? Which was a shame. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Sudeiko 24. I didn't see the Ultimate Adventure, but I did see the trial of Davros. Something about Daleks on stage makes them feel more dangerous. Absolutely, yeah. Pete saying he saw it. So did I. Pete, I saw it at the Empire as well with Pertwee. Yeah, I wonder if we were there on the same night. How bizarre. What else? And he's probably been saying, I think I was disappointed there was no theme tune, a crappy TARDIS and a terrible song. Just the one song. I lived down the road from Wimbledon Theatre. I saw the TARDIS thrown out. I could have taken it. You should have done. Could have flogged it by now. That must have been
a technical thing, because when I saw it with Pertwee, there was a definite buzz when the theme came on.
Yeah, I thought I remembered the theme, but that would it would have been with Wimbledon on that one. Oh, yeah. I mean, they should have done a few more,
runs.
Runs for it as well. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, whatever we think about this, I mean, 60 years of the Daleks, and they keep coming back. They keep coming back, and it's just they are iconic. And talking of iconic, this photograph for me is so special. I was so excited when these things hit the newspapers as they did. Do you guys remember seeing these pictures of Peter and Janet with these Daleks in the newspapers back there? In front of Tower Bridge, I was wetting myself with anticipation, thinking we were going to get to see something very similar to that iconic moment back in the 60s, and was actually gutted when we didn't, because obviously John and the team couldn't get up at a stupid time on a Sunday morning to do it again. But I mean, they were so excited, and this, of course, that's what I'm talking about there. But I mean, that is still iconic to today, isn't it?
This is something I have to say about directors. Richard Marsh, who's a lovely man, but some of the shots he's taken in Dalek Bees don't live up to these photographs, which is such a shame.
But these photographs we grew up with, do you remember these in the original Doctor Who monster book from Target?
Yeah.
And then there was this one that got me from the monster book. I wanted to know, what the hell was this about? Why was he paddling?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. This is again one of my favorite moments, and I have to say, people give Dalek such a hard time about not getting upstairs, but no one asks or says why they're such good swimmers. Because they get, they come up the Thames, and then great,
Do you remember in the weekly? Do you remember in the early days of the weekly, they used to do this crazy caption competition? And do you remember this one? I remember to this very day what the winner was. It had just been like, that's the last time I go on a date with a sea devil. I don't know what you want, but if you're watching and that was you, you must be what? You must be in your late 50s, early 60s now. I remember that one out of all of those crazy captions. Well done. That was brilliant. Absolute genius. But yeah, I mean, it showed, it was always about the cliffhanger, wasn't it, really? Bringing the Doctor's biggest foes back in. And it's just amazing that to this day, they are still, I don't care what they're trying to do to them, they're 60 years old. So is the Doctor. So is the TARDIS. We've covered them all, I think, in our 60th anniversary celebrations now. They can't, you can do whatever you want to do them, but they're still going to be iconic, and you shouldn't tamper with them too much, because you know what, they're British legends.
Absolutely.
The thing is this whole idea about Doctor Who and behind the sofa, and in many ways I don't get that concept, because as a kid I just watched it and I was scared by it. I would sit there. I never went behind a settee, but I was telling you, JT, in one of my texts, wasn't I, that the Daleks are the only monster I have actually been properly scared of. And I only realised that when they did the exhibition with John Pertwee in the early 70s, around all the town halls and that, and they had the exhibition. And they had the Daleks set up in a control room and all the usual stuff. I'm with my mum and dad. I'm about 4. And they were telling me all the time, it was a long queue around the town hall, all the way around. And they were saying, now, there's an actor inside and it's not real. Yeah. And they were rehearsing me. And I said, I know. And we got right into there. And as we went into the actual Dalek kind of center control base, and there were railings there and everything, they moved, and the the sound effect said exterminate, and I ran like the clappers. I saw nothing. They could not drag me back in because I was thinking, they're all stupid. Don't you realize they're real? All these people are stood there, and I just couldn't get it. And so they're the only monster in the whole history of Doctor Who where I've actually properly been scared.
I love that the Daleks had that effect on you as well. I mean, it takes me back to the original Blackpool exhibition where they were lit so beautifully. Because for those of us that remember that, and we do have a show about the exhibitions called Blackpool Days, so go and have a look at that. But, you know, it's a case of, in those days, they lit them with green and yellows and reds and purple thing. Oh, and it was so atmospheric. And then you had that, you know, that noise of the Dalek control room going on and on and on. And the Sentinel Dalek, the famous gold Sentinel Dalek at the very bottom of the stairs when you walked in, was always threatening to shoot the adult smokers.
Yeah.
You know, even though you knew there was something about them that when you got down there as a kid, you had to really, you know, there was something unsettling about it because it turned its head, the eye stalk moved up and down, it looked at you. I've actually got a picture somewhere of myself and my mum and my sister with that Sentinel Dalek, and it's actually looking at the camera. Perfect moment where the picture's been taken as the Dalek turns its head and it's looking at the camera as though it's posing. It was so clever back in those days, and it's nice to know. I hope that a whole generation of kids got this. Because...
Oh, go on.
I was going to say...
Go on. Sorry, keep going, JT.
I was going to say Simon here has brought it up to date with the Doctor Who proms and the Daleks' appearances at the Doctor Who proms. When you watch those things and you see the kids' reactions to the Daleks, it must have been as we were. You know, you must have been like.
Well, I was going to say, you know, the Earl's Court exhibition in the 2000s?
Yes, the one that started the experience, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember me and Jamie went, and obviously we're adults, you know, we know what we're doing. And I remember they had a series of rooms, didn't they? And there was a room where the Dalek was kind of half hidden, and then it suddenly said, lock doors, and suddenly there was just me and Jamie. And
that's flashbacks.
And there was a kid of about 7. He looked a bit vulnerable, and his mum and dad had gone to the next room, and then it said doors locked and all that stuff. And the atmosphere, and I was watching it. I was really enjoying, in a way, watching this kid's face. He was, and so we stood a bit closer to him because I think the poor kid was bricking it because suddenly locked doors, and then and of course the Dalek raised up, and there were lasers going past him. And I think he believed the doors were locked and everything. And I thought, oh, a kid. He'll be remembering that in 50, 60 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably seeking psychiatric help for that now as well. And we've got Gary saying here.
That was you as well, though, when you were.
We've got Gary saying here, the Daleks had undersea bases in TV Countdown. I'd forgotten about that. Yes, they do in those beautiful comic strips. And that was another thing that kept the Daleks going because they were around in comic strip form as well. I mean, one of my favorites, the Dogs of Doom in the weekly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on. None of us saw that part 1, did we? I mean, again, they brought in like the television at the end of part 1. For those of you who don't know, the Dogs of Doom, which is available now in the 4th Doctor anthology in its latest incarnation there. But you turn the page and there's the Daleks, and you just went, oh! And you had to wait a week. And it was based on that picture, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The artist had taken that picture, and there was a great big exterminate underneath it, written in great big jaggy writing. It was really dramatic. And you're just like, oh. And nobody cared because there was nobody else to talk to. I remember going to my mum and saying, the Daleks. Yeah, right. What do you want for your tea? You know, it was just, what a moment that was. But they appeared... Although from that moment on, they've been an essential part of the Doctor Who weekly, monthly magazine setup, haven't they, in those comic strips? It's very interesting. I'm sure they must still be in it. Oh, we've just had Liberation of the Daleks, haven't we, of course, with the 14th incarnation. It's very interesting.
I'm intrigued how, there was a standoff at one point between Terry Nation and the BBC in the late 60s, early 70s. And did he not? I know he wanted movie deals and everything. He wanted the Daleks separate to Doctor Who, didn't he?
He wanted them in America. He wanted to make a big series in America and movies in America.
Did it just go wrong? I mean, because obviously in the end he came back. But
I mean, you were dealing with a totally different system, and you were also dealing with 2 incredibly different cultures there. So the legend was, of course, that he took these pepper pots over there and they sneered at it. So he never was able to get the eventual series or movie deals that he wants. So he brought them back, and by that time, of course, Pertwee was in the role, and then we got Day of the Daleks. But there you go. That's one of those things. How things change. I still don't know if people abroad get them. I don't know.
And we never got Wheel in Space with Daleks and Cybermen after all, did we?
Oh well, some things we have to be very, very grateful
Possibly.
for. I think. Richard's asking here: is there an explanation of how the Daleks survived the end of their first show? No.
It was set in the future.
No.
It was odd, isn't it? Because if it was set in the future and they could only move on metal, that suggested they had de-evolved.
Yes.
You know, which never really sat right with me. I just always assumed that maybe there were other Dalek colonies elsewhere on Skaro. That's the only thing I could reconcile it with.
There were one of those wonderful timeline things back when the show was off air, when we didn't think anything was going to happen. I can't remember which one of them.
Of course, they have the plunger on the back here. Remember?
Yes, they had that for Dalek Invasion of the Earth, and then they had the slats, didn't they? The slats that are around them from the chase onwards are the equivalent of that. But I think it's up to yourself as an individual, really, where you want that to be. I always put it somewhere in the middle of their time frame, before things like Destiny.
I think the interesting thing is, if Raymond Cusick had designed them with the thought of them being outside, they've been designed very differently, don't you think?
Oh, totally. You would have added those little bits in, wouldn't you, and all that sort of stuff.
They'd have had legs for a start.
Yeah.
Oh, let's not go into that one. Sadeko24 is saying, problematic. I remember being similarly scared of my grand's old vacuum cleaner because it looked hideous. This is the Doctor Who effect and the Dalek effect on household objects for us. Oh, and Pete's also remembering those beautiful Dalek indents from the Doctor Who night on BBC Two. Were they fabulous?
Yeah.
They were absolutely good. Time Lord 2023. Hello. Nice to see you. Genesis of the Daleks is one of my favorite episodes because the serial embraced classic science fiction themes. Also, it had this dark and scary feeling while you watch it. I'm so glad because Time Lord 2023 is our resident young person. And it's great to hear that our resident young person loves that one because it's all about science fiction. That's what Doctor Who is. It's science fiction. And the Daleks, well, totally science fiction, aren't they? Really? I mean, you can't beat that, Darth Vader. Actually, Time Lord 2023. Let me know, what was your reaction when you saw the Daleks in the new series? What was your instant reaction, please? I'd like to know how you got there for it. But it's lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us again. Sadeko's saying here, it's a shame, really. A Dalek spin-off would have worked very well, especially in the 1980s after the Star Wars effect. I've always said a Dalek series would do very well if done properly. Personally, I wouldn't want to see it done in the current show business climate we're in, because I think it needs to be a war show, and it needs to be like certain other fans have shown, and you can certainly see some fantastic Dalek CGI stories on WhoTube. You can actually see that and see the potential for that series that could be, but I certainly wouldn't want it done now. I'm trying to be very, very nice.
I was kind of hoping, because they were dipping into comic strip characters like Beat the Meep, they may have done an Abzan Dark Dalek killer series. Would have been fabulous, but it'd be so PC. You could go around chopping Daleks up with chainsaws. Wouldn't work.
It'd be trans. He would actually be. Yeah.
If you don't know who Absalom Dak is, like us oldies, Absalom Dak was the Dalek killer in the Doctor Who monthly. He had his own series at the back of the comics in Doctor Who.
He had a record as well, remember?
He did, but he had his own, and it was beautifully illustrated. It was beautifully written. He was a big, hairy, butch warrior. He really was, and he was a man's man, and he had a beautiful princess. Was she a princess as a girlfriend? And the whole story of him was his whole life revolved around the Daleks exterminated her. She died. Yeah. And it was an amazing story, and you felt for him as kids reading Doctor Who Weekly. You felt for him, and he had all these friends, but his main aim in life was to destroy the Daleks, and he was so popular. He eventually made his way into the Doctor Who strip itself with the Doctor, rather than just the backstory, and he's become part of our legends.
But again, well, wasn't he? I think he turned out to be a clone, but he was in one of the books, if you remember.
I think there's a few. There was the collected graphic novel, wasn't there? I wouldn't.
Well,
He's another one of these
novelizations.
Oh yeah, you're right. I don't think I don't know. They were going into uncharted territory with me, and I stopped reading it because I thought that's not where I want him to go. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
But there is. He's another one of those characters, guys, where I wouldn't want to see him done today on television.
Yeah.
For the reasons you said there, Ian, they would emasculate him and they would belittle him, and he's not one of those characters because he was ahead of his time, really. More 2000 AD in a sense, wasn't he? In Doctor Who, you know.
Well, they wouldn't kill Tayanov, and they'd be going around together, and she would be the wise one, making him look stupid.
Yeah.
And
he wouldn't be allowed to kill any Daleks either, which defeats the purpose of the show. But
yeah.
Well, that's true. I mean, all he did, and he had that incredible sword, wasn't it?
But a chainsaw he had, wasn't it? It's a chainsaw.
Chainsword, yeah.
Yeah.
But wasn't it sort of laser fanged or something like that as well? And he just sliced through these things, and the bits went everywhere. Oh, fantastic art! If you can find it, anywhere, get it. Absalom Dalek Killer. Look him up and find it. I'm probably saying he loved him. I think we all did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Gary's saying he was basically Rambo.
Yeah.
Just a science fiction thing. Peter's asking, were there rumors of Daleks in Blake 7? Terry Nation, of course, created Blake 7, another one of our favorites. Yes, he wanted the crossover, and he never got there for some bizarre reason. There is a reason, and I have to look it up. There was a reason why it didn't happen.
I remember a great story of Tom and Gareth Thomas talking about them being in the same universe.
Yes.
And they should have had a crossover with Blake and the Doctor. That would be fabulous as well.
It would have been interesting if you brought the Daleks into it as well, because, of course, the Blake 7 team were actually, in fact, terrorists. Would the Doctor align with them, or would he align with the Daleks?
Good point.
Interesting, isn't it, really? He probably would have been in the middle trying to say, where's the TARDIS? I need to get out of this nightmare script, this whippet dung. Time Lord 2023, what are you saying here? I had a lot of excitement in me, as I've always been a Dalek fan. Also, we've got to thank Terry Nation for the amazing invention. We do. Yeah, we have to remember that. It is bizarre, isn't it, everybody? 60 years ago.
Yeah.
This month. It is, isn't it? British culture. British culture 60 years ago, this very month, was changed forever.
Mm.
Because of a TV show and because of an incredible creation. It's amazing.
I mean, Dalek is in the English dictionary. It's transcended. We've all seen them. Political cartoons of the Dalek in the Times that graph over the years, and to say it's iconic, it clearly is, because it's defined by that. It's in the English lexicon. It's in our culture. It's been referenced in Parliament. It's been referenced in political satire. They are right up there.
Do you remember when the 2005 series came back? You used to get Dalek busty cards. You could open them up and they'd say exterminate. Remember them?
Yeah.
I think GT's got one. What a surprise!
He won't have opened it. But...
no, it's still sealed. There we go.
Still sealed, but
I've got loads of them here. Look at these things here. But you had loads. You don't see them as much now, do you? Really? But they were huge. They were absolutely huge. Sudoku 24. Thank you so much. This is it. They were meant to be the Andromedans in Series 3, but they never got the rights sorted for them. That would have been interested. Oh, and Gary's actually saying they would have been the aliens in Star 1 episode there. Timescales, hello to you. 60 years ago isn't really all that long ago. It's right around the time of my birthday as well. Well, happy birthday for you, as well as to Ian here as well. But I just think, I just love that fact that 60 years ago, this very month in December, these Pepper Pots got onto British television and changed British culture forever. And we have to thank absolutely everybody again that was involved with that. We have to thank, obviously, Terry Nation. We have to thank Ray Kuzik. We have to thank Verity for going against the no bug-eyed monster rule, because the story was the thing, wasn't it? It's not a bug-eyed monster. It's what was in it. Oh, amazing. Jack is saying here as well, I love my 1970s talking Dalek. It sits on my desk and I often give his button a press while I'm passing by. Quite right. Mine aren't working. That's outrageous. How are yours working, Jack? Mine have run out. Well, listen.
David Whittaker, I would say arguably, not wanting to be controversial, but arguably David Whittaker could probably write Daleks better than Terry Nation.
Definitely.
I'd agree with that. Yep. certainly we've done a few shows where David Whittaker is mentioned on that now as well as part of our 60th celebration episodes. But he had a whole game plan when it came to the Daleks. As I said on one of our shows, he had the Whoniverse well before 2023 because it was all set out in the original Dalek book. The first piece of Doctor Who merchandise was a Dalek book, and it's all in there. And what a clever guy! What a clever guy he was, so ahead of his time with all this. And
you judging how much he knew and how much of a grasp he had on it in those early days, it shows you how much Russell T Davies doesn't, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, would RTD be able to do a book of the whole kind of back story as David Whittaker? I mean, I remember when we did the Target special, and when I was even reading bits about the companions, he gave them all a backstory and everything. And there's no payback for him, is there? Because he wasn't using it in a script. It's just he gave it a proper context.
It was all original material from Whittaker, whereas Russell T Davies would be drawing from other people's work. Well,
that's the problem, isn't it? Yeah. We're 60 years in now, and the contributions of those original 26 years. Oh, I'm not going to be controversial.
I think because the show has lasted so long, it's difficult. You can see patterns repeating themselves a little bit, but it is all about imagination, though, isn't it? Having a good imagination to think of new things that go with the context of the show as established, though, don't you think?
Oh, well, as long as it doesn't get altered.
Yeah.
Anyway, tune in on Sunday. Problem being is saying to Time Muddler, the first Dr. TARDIS next to you, is that a custom with an open window?
Which one am I looking at?
The first Dr. TARDIS.
Behind the white Dalek, I think, is it?
Yeah.
Where am I looking? I'm all over the shop here.
Lower shelf, down.
Down a bit, along a bit.
There's one with an open window.
The one behind the white Dalek.
Yeah.
Oh. Is that the Hartnell TARDIS?
No, it's a character one, isn't it?
Has that TARDIS got an open? That one. Has it got an open window?
Yeah, that's a Hartnell one.
Is the front window open? Oh, the open.
Wow.
The open.
Yeah.
So is that a custom-made one?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very
okay.
much. Richard Young, very nice, a very good model maker. Richard Young, he's on Facebook.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
that is absolutely gorgeous.
That is beautiful.
He's done loads. He's done them all. But look at that. That's the Peter Davison one from the,
fantastic.
From the publicity.
And then the last one here I got from him is from the time tunnel sequence in the 70s. The one that comes down with John. So there you go. Problem being, I mean, although I have to say I am very envious still of Ian's Dalek there. I have to say.
Well, I have to show one of my custom-made TARDIS.
Yeah, we've got Time Lord 2023 saying to us here, Doctor Who is the best show, and I like how we can have different opinions about the show, but still love it. Yes, we can. I mean, we all have to have different opinions about it, and that's what Who's Views is all about, having the different opinions. Time Lord 2023. It'd be interesting to see how we're all going to take it from Sunday, though. Let's have a look at that, shall we? Okay, what's that one for? This is the TARDIS show, by the way. This is not the TARDIS show. That was last week.
But this is an art card TARDIS made for a friend of mine. Got made for me by an artist called Raymond McFadden from Glasgow, and it's a great Hartnell TARDIS. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Jack's
got a question for us very quickly. What is your favourite Dalek that you own? Ian's obviously going to be Dalek Sec.
Mine's is my little Dalek Sec, because I love Dalek Sec. I'm so jealous of Ian. So
I've got
to speak to my wife for my 60th. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. Have a word.
My oldest one was. I've got a eunuch Dalek. But no, it's the red Dalek.
Is that a new series Dalek? Is it?
Yeah, it will be because it's got no single left. So it's my eunuch Dalek. There you go.
I'm going to have to say mine is going to be the Palatoy talking Dalek because my first one. So because of that, that's my favourite one as well. But I've got thousands of the buggers all around the place here.
I love this one.
Oh yes,
the 18-inch one.
Yes, yeah.
That's just absolutely gorgeous. This is just.
That's the remote control one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got mine here. There was a red one as well. Did you get the red one too?
I didn't know.
No.
I wanted to, but to be honest, I'd run out of shelf space.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. So hopefully that's a couple of our favourite ones there.
I do quite like this one though.
Let's have a look.
Oh yes, lovely.
Oh,
yeah.
There it is again.
There we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got this. It's a custom model one of it.
Oh wow.
Somebody's done it as a kit, and it comes apart. I mean, the gun's separate because it broke off in transit annoyingly, but it's beautifully detailed.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, look at! I love his oily, grungy look.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Problem being saying he loves his Union Jack Dalek. Look after it because it's increasing in value because it was only available that particular year. So look after that one, mate. Porcelain Dalek, says Gary. Look great if I remember. The only porcelain one I've got is the cookie jar. Is that the one you mean? I don't know. He's also got the Ironside Dalek offering tea. Yes, and of course that came with the Winston Churchill figure, isn't it? So you can't get those anymore now. This is the equivalent. Oh, this is the equivalent of the Scar comparison scene in Jaws. That's great. The remote control, the Union Jack remote control is a weird one, but I ended up buying one. Good. Look after it. Look after them because it's increasing in value. So do look after it. And Time Lord 2023 saying his favorite Dalek is the Emperor. Which version? Anyway, so listen, this has been our celebration of 60 years of the Daleks. I want to thank Paul, I want to thank Ian, and I want to thank Time Modeler Ian for joining us. I want to thank everybody here for joining us as well in the chat. It's great to see you. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Well, we're going to be back next on Whose Views on Sunday. And I don't want to ruin the party, but make sure you're here. Make sure you're here.
Might be a short one.
It might be a short one. You never know. Well, myself and the Whotastic panel will be here at 7:00 for our review of the next alleged 60th anniversary special, Time Lord 2023. Make sure you are here with us. I really want to hear your opinion on that because it looks like we might be going through another major change for our favorite Time Lord. Who knows? Well, they do.
Have an action line at the end and counselling service.
Come back, the timeless child, always forgiven.
We are going to be here from 7:00. Sadeko 23 is saying, "Look, brilliant stream, guys. Thank you so much." And Pizza Green, thank you. Thanks for the stream, all, says Vasco. It's fabulous. If you are new to us, if you haven't subbed to the channel, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do like, please share, do all the things that you know you want to do. And we will see you. Oh gosh, why do I feel I'm going to go and watch another Dalek story? Yes, I feel the need for. What Dalek story should I watch? Oh, I think it might have to be Revelation. Ooh, I don't know. It might have to be Day of the Daleks, the original cut. I feel the need to do that. I feel I need to be safe with some Doctor Who that I know and recognise and enjoy. But we're going to see you 7:00 Sunday for our review of The Giggle. I don't know. Yeah. Until then, what can we say? But happy birthday, happy anniversary to the Daleks. Until we see you next time on Whose Views. Bye-bye, everybody. Say goodbye, panel.
Goodbye, panel.
Bye. Bye.